Hey guys, I just wanted to start today's stream with a song. I was in the mood for it. Hey that guy, how you doing? These times they are uncertain, of that there is no doubt, and nobody can tell me quite what it's all about. The heartbreak and the loneliness, the chaos and the fear will make even the strongest cry, I wish my ma was here. A young man on a battlefield fights for a rich man's gold. The bullet cracks into his spine, he knows he won't grow. And as the tears come streaming down, at once his mind goes clear. The war was fought for nothing, he cries, I wish my ma was here. A lively story well in hand, a joke to soothe your soul. When it came to arguing, she'd forgive and let it go. And when I cried, she held me, told me it's okay, my dear. And as we face these darkened days, I wish my ma was here. And as we march into the streets, as all the righteous do, we'll raise our voices to the skies, they cannot stop the truth. And as we tear their structures down, we'll raise a victory cheer. We made the world a better place, and I wish my ma was here. Yeah, we made the world a better place, and I wish my ma was here. How are you guys doing? Subscribe maybe. Good to see you. I just wanted to start today with a song. The mood took me, the spirit took me, and so off I went. Hope you guys are doing well out there. Oh, I basically just slept today. That's essentially how it's been going. The hard reality, right, about what we're all experiencing is I don't really want to participate in this society. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not really interested in participating in it. Seems to me like at this stage in the game, the number one way that we could completely rebel from the system is simply through our non-participation. Don't buy things like Black Friday is tomorrow, isn't it? We got Black Friday coming up. I'm seeing the memes, so I assume Black Friday's on its way. Don't participate. Don't buy something you don't need just because it's cheaper, right? One of these days, one of these years, like we're heading towards Christmas now, right? This sort of consumerist orgy. Oh, you're getting banned, are you, Content? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that with what's going on, like it's obvious that channels like mine were shadow banned a long time ago, and that and it's all being done through automation. There isn't a person, right? It's just they're constantly tightening up the algorithm. Right? And the algorithm is going to get more and more tightened as the genocide persists, right? And as it becomes more obvious that the society is collapsing itself into fascism, as it becomes more obvious that we are in this that we are in this major decline towards fascism, right? And all of these social media outlets are going to all of these media outlets are going to do everything they can to, and what they'll say and how they'll justify it to themselves is that they're fighting extremism, right? And but the result is that, like, they'll look at a person screaming for help and be like, oh my God, that's so extreme. Like, a drowning person will seem extreme to a person who refuses to acknowledge that they're drowning, right? They'll seem extreme, and so the algorithm will be like, oh wow, this is very extreme what we're seeing here. People trying not to drown, and so the result will be censorship, and that's what it'll look like. Free Palestine, good to see you. Good to see you. Right out the gate, we've got a Twitch person. Whatever, Ratbag, Pinko. Yeah, you're a serious person who should all take seriously, right? That's definitely a serious position. Definitely not just a little boy, right, who can be roundly ignored. Yeah, happy Native American Genocide Day. Good. Nice sidestep, grinning. Yeah, Genocide. Yeah, I like that. Genocide, like a cartoon character. Ham sandwiches did nothing bad. Yeah, good flavor. Exactly. Yeah, Ratbag Pinko. Pinko, man. What a great one, eh? I especially love Pinko because it's like the color's red. Like, this is red. Like, Pinko, it's always been a weird one to me. But since when have fascists ever been coherent? Speaking of fascists, Dutch populist leader Geert Wilders, whose far-right party ran on an anti-Islam, anti-immigrant platform that also called for the Netherlands to leave the EU, appears to have won the most seats in the country's parliamentary elections. So I have had lots of people from the Netherlands come through here and try to have a conversation with me, and have had a conversation with me. I actually have found these people to be very polite and not at all rude. So I find that to be very uplifting. People who consider themselves in a social democracy are generally pretty, near as I can tell, are generally pretty polite and pretty sympathetic to my position and are willing to listen. So I've always valued that. And what I've always said to people who are living in what they consider to be a social democracy is that they will go after it. That the system of capital, these social democracies, or what's called social democracies, only came into place in the first place because of the looming threat of communism. That especially in a place like the Netherlands, like literally the next door neighbor, a big gigantic superpower collapsed, but became communist. That the Tsars collapsed and the communists took over. And so if you're a capitalist or a ruler in the Netherlands, you're going, especially if you have a virulent communist movement within your own borders, calling for a revolution, organizing for a revolution. And so what's an effective way for capitalists and monarchists to stymie the threat of revolution? Well, one of the ways they try, of course, is militant violence, fascism, right? But if you find yourself in a position where you can't get enough militant fascists to defeat the militant communists, then that's a non-starter. So what's the second way? Appeasement, concessions, concession-based bargaining, right? That, okay, we'll give them this, we'll give them that, and that'll quell the peasants, right? Many of them will put down their pitchforks and go home if we just give them this, if we give them that. Oh, they're asking for more vacation time. Okay, give them the vacation time. We keep the means of production, though, right? Right. And what I've always said of these, Rusty, good to see you, my man. Yeah, mercy me, we've done it again. Glory be and mercy me, we've done it yet again. What I've always said to these social democrats when they come in here is that without that looming threat of communism, without the pitchforks, and without the people saying, "Hey, we could just overthrow you," like we could just get rid of you completely. Like, why do capitalists own the means of production anyway? Like, it's sort of weird that there's this Ponzi loser. Like, here in Canada, the most obvious example of this is Galen Weston Jr. Like, Galen Weston basically spent his entire life bribing politicians in order to gain majority control of the food distribution network, right? That's his life's work. That he owns big, gigantic conglomerate grocery stores that are privatized under his name for no reason that I can decipher, outside of the fact that he's a rich billionaire who bribes a bunch of politicians to let him do it, right? And why does he want it? Because he wants to build an empire and become a billionaire. Oh, okay, great. So he earned it, okay? So I can see how a capitalist would be like, yeah, he earned it. You know, I won't even do the lampoon voice. I could see how a capitalist would be like, no, he came up with a model that was more efficient and more effective, and he convinced a bunch of politicians to go along with him because it was an effective model. That's what an actual capitalist would actually say. It's like, oh, okay, sure. Galen Weston Jr. does not have that privilege. He does not have the ability to say, like, yeah, he was a super smart investor. He was literally born a billionaire. He was born with an empire. Why on God's green earth is this guy involved in this process at all? Why is Galen Weston allowed to be an inheritor of $1 billion empire and then make decisions at all? Why does anyone take this seriously whatsoever? Sobeys is still around, yep. Yet number go inexorably up, exactly. And so I've said to the social democrats, and I'll say again and again, and here we're seeing it. Here it is, right? And the next time a social democrat in here comes in and starts to defend the Netherlands and starts to say the Scandinavian model, I'm like, here it is. Like, here is what I've been saying the entire time. This is what I've been saying the entire time. I've been saying over and over and over again, right? So it's right there. It's right there. It's right there. The camera is reversed, and so I got to reverse everything that I do for the visual if I want to do it. I got to point away from the screen. Yeah. There it is. The capitalists are going to take power, and they're going to start stripping away the benefits that the social democrats have had. Like, that's their goal, and that's what they're going to do. And how do I know? Because that's what they've been doing in America. That's what they've been doing in Canada. That's what they've been doing across Europe. Like, that's what they've been doing the entire time. That's the entire neoliberal agenda. So, and it's going to become more and more radical, and it's going to happen faster and faster as the system of capital begins to feel more and more seriously threatened. Which it's going to feel more and more seriously threatened because most of the rest of the world is going to say, yeah, I mean, not so much with this whole capitalist way of thinking. Like, sure, I mean, maybe free markets if you're talking about Xboxes. Like, if you're talking about, like, iPhones, oh, okay, sure. Like, why not have, like, an iPhone? Like, why not have private owners own a factory? But even those factories, there should be worker unions, and there should be things built in there. Like, we're not going to just allow a little tiny dictatorship to exist within our borders because we're not insane, right? Unlike the capitalist model, which the Western capitalist model, which is literally like, yeah, totalitarian dictatorships are completely fine as long as they're privately held businesses, right? If Bill Gates wants to run his entire empire like a totalitarian dictatorship, that's completely fine, and we'll call it a charity even. Like this sort of completely disconnected, lunatic way of looking at the way the world works. It's incredible. Telling you, can't be mad at the ham man. He grew up in a gent city where he had to concentrate. It's wild to me that the consumer feels attacked because the ham man won't do their order correctly. I feel like you're talking in a code, content, and I haven't deciphered the code. I don't know what the code is. And meanwhile, like, here's your results, right? Here's the results of capital. We all remember the East Palestine. Interesting that, like, the largest disasters that have happened over the last couple of years have happened in places called Palestine, right? So the East Palestine chemical spill that resulted in like a mushroom cloud explosion. Well, toxic chemical spill from train derailment forces Kentucky residents to flee homes. Wonka, wonk, 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 wonk. Capitalism's working just fine, eh? Like, it's just working completely fine. I really have to reaffirm to everybody, right? Like the goal for all of us should be total abandonment of these pro-capitalist parties. That I can see within the NDP here in Canada, the New Democratic Party, that they are becoming more and more aware and more desperate that they are not galvanizing support and they are not gaining support. And there's two really solid reasons for it. First of all, Canadians are extremely racist. Obviously, we're supporting a genocide across the board. So we're not going to vote for a brown guy with a big beard wearing a turban. We're just not going to do that, right? But then number two, like the NDP are essentially in a position where their position is concessions bargaining. That's where they're starting. They're starting at, we should do concessions-based bargaining. No. How about you guys start saying nationalization? How about you guys actually start saying out loud, we're going to nationalize this? Why does Galen Weston have control of the food distribution network at all? Why is there this little parasite that exists on the side of the system, siphoning away wealth into an offshore account somewhere, when we could literally just privatize nationalize the entire system and be rid of this private system? Just get rid of this guy. Why is there no one within the NDP that's actually saying that out loud? Because they're all in the thrall of capital, that they are the ones that are supposed to be the limit of discourse, and that the capitalists fund them to do that. That they say, okay, this is the limit of discourse. And the NDP are steadily, I'm seeing it happen, they're steadily making it a little bit further and a little bit further, right? Jagmeet Singh is saying out loud, greedy corporate CEOs, right? And saying that the owner, and the liberals and the conservatives are not confronting these greedy CEOs. Well, what's the confrontation that Jagmeet Singh wants? We're going to confront them and put a 1.2% tax on them. Who gives a fuck? Nationalize their businesses, be rid of them, and don't negotiate. Stop pretending like what we're interested in is a negotiation, as if these people have any credibility. Right? Like that's the reason why organizations like the NDP, and that's the reason why socialist movements in Canada can't get any steam and can't go anywhere, because they're standing up in front of a populace that's literally like, be rid of these people, get rid of this shit, and saying, yeah, what we'll do is we'll tax them at 1.2% of their gross domestic. Like, who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck? Tell these people to their faces, you are irrelevant, we are getting rid of you, and we are taxing you out of existence. And anything short of that is just, I don't know why anyone would even bother supporting it. Yeah, I've mostly boycotted Sobeys because they've done explicit union busting. I say mostly because I have to spread the hate between them, Loblaws and Metro. Mostly shop at Costco, they're less evil. Well, the truth, though, that, guys, that some people just don't have a choice. Right? Like, I don't have a choice, right? Like, if I don't shop at the No Frills, right? If I don't shop at the No Frills, I don't get food. That's just the hard truth, right? Like, if I need to go to a grocery store, that's what I have, right? And like, so they have monopoly power. You have to shop at these places. They're the only game in town. And so, of course, they can price gouge and do all this kind of stuff and get away with it, because no politician is going to actually say, hey, wait a minute, we should just get rid of these guys, right? We should literally tell them to fuck off, put their tax rate at 100%, tax them out of existence, and nationalize their businesses. They're just not going to do that. So these corporate CEOs can just do what they like, right? They can just do what they like, and they just get away with it, and nobody's being serious. June, good to see you. Howdy to you. Watson, good to see you too. Good thing Biden, the most pro-union president ever, and the various rail union bureaucracies in the U.S. rammed that pro-company contract through on the workers last December, huh? Yeah, we'll push him to the left. We're going to push him to the left, you guys. That's what we're going to do. We're going to take Joe Biden. We're going to push him to the left. Hooray! Look at how far left we pushed him. Tikas Bazaars on Twitch. Good to see you. I am against liberalism. Yeah. Liberalism is simply a negotiation with capital that when it fails, they sidestep and allow the fascists through, and they bend the knee to fascists. Like, liberalism is an attempt to say to a genocidal slave system, we can negotiate for concessions-based bargaining, and it always fails. Because liberals misunderstand the character of capital. They misunderstand that capital itself is a psychopathic system that is foaming at the mouth to murder people. Like, that's what the system of capital is all about. And liberals want to believe that it can be rational and it can be negotiated with, and it can't be. That maybe they'll take power for a moment, but as we see again and again, when liberals take power, you don't really end up with anything, right? You don't end up with any real concessions or anything serious. And certainly nothing permanent that the capitalists, when they finally take power, the conservatives, when they come in, won't just obliterate. Right? Like, we saw that pretty much on a one-to-one basis with the Ford administration coming in and just obliterating our entire economy and the entire economic plan for Ontario. And now our economy is about as good as Alabama's. Matthew, thank you so much for your donation. $4.99. That's a good Black Friday price point right there, my man. $4.99, not $5. $4.99. Thank you so much, Matthew. A good opportunity to say, like, share, subscribe, right? Hit the bells, hit the whistles, do all the stuff. Tell people I exist. Tell people I exist, right? My life's goal is to have 6 digits in my bank account so I can start handing it out. That's gonna be nice. I'm gonna film myself walking around the streets just handing out money to people. That's the goal. It's gonna be nice. It's gonna be nice. Yeah, that guy. Yeah. Most don't have a car. Take for granted you have a car. Yeah. I mean, and I mean, you're talking to a guy who thinks that the invention of the car is like the dumbest thing we've ever done. Like basing our entire culture and our entire infrastructure system and the way that we think about infrastructure on cars. Like, if people ever reclaim the ruins of New York, right, they're not going to build the infrastructure based on the idea that everyone has a car, right? Matthias, there's only one grocery store where I live. I definitely do not have any choice, and they actually charge more for convenience, right? For monopolization. That's what they're charging more for. Always look out for your pals. Pals are doing their best. Good to see you, Radio. Good to see you, Radio Halifax. So, you know things are going bad for the Zionists when you've got places like the Daily Beast writing articles. Israel's comically bad disinformation proves they're losing the PR war. From a fake nurse to a phony list of hostage guards, Israel's disinformation efforts are becoming increasingly wild, just as they lose control of the Gaza war narrative. Israel's official Arabic account affiliated with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs posted a selfie video of a Palestinian nurse condemning Hamas for taking over an Al-Shifa hospital in the Gaza Strip on November 11th. But some things about the video didn't add up. Everything about it smacked of high school theater, from the botched accent that sounded like it was straight out of an Israeli soap opera to the perfectly scripted IDF talking points rolling off her tongue. Hamas, we're stealing the fuel. Check. Hamas, we're taking morphine. Check. Then there was the pristine white lab coat looking like it had just come out from the back of a dry cleaner. The audio track of bombs falling that sounded like samples from a late 80s Casio keyboard. And the contrived stethoscope waving you'd expect from an extra on Grey's Anatomy. Hamas hadn't stolen her makeup, though, which was immaculate. The Palestinian Ministry of Health logo slapped strategically in the background, but visible over her shoulder, looked like an OSINT honey trap. This video must be authentic, right? I can see the Health Ministry logo. At least that's what whoever made it would hope the burgeoning army of sketchy, anonymous, OSINT, open-source intelligent researchers might say. The only thing missing was a degree hanging in the background saying Tel Aviv Upstairs Medical College. Oh, and perhaps I should have mentioned this first. No one at El Shifa had ever seen the nurse before. Soon, the volume of ridicule directed at those sharing it reached such a pitch that the Israel Arabic account deleted their tweet. I guess they didn't know the source either. Forget nurse ratchet. This was more like a nurse hatchet job. It gets worse. If only it stopped there. But the IDF appeared to be engaged in an intel competition to see who among them can drop the biggest disinfo bomb. On November 13th, Daniel Hagari, the IDF spokesperson, appeared in a video. There were no nurses this time, but Hagari looked like he was standing in a nursery. Murals painted by children adorned the walls, and he pointed to a baby's bottle and a bag of diapers. Hagari claimed that he was standing in the basement of Al-Rantisi Hospital in Gaza. He also claimed that this is where Hamas was keeping hostages. Among his evidence for this claim, a jerry-rigged toilet and a pair of curtains covering not a window, but a wall. We have curtains in a basement, right? But he saves his most damning evidence for last, pointing to a piece of paper stuck to the wall. On the paper is Arabic writing. With mounting indignation, Hagari offered his translation. This is a Guardian list, where every terrorist writes his name, and every terrorist has his own shift, guarding the people that were here. The only thing is, it wasn't a list of names. It was a list of days of the week. Why lie? These disinfo whoppers aren't anomalies, but rather a series of increasingly desperate attempts to try and justify the growing number of civilians killed in Gaza in response to the horrific Hamas attack on October 7th. Even Israel, which has enjoyed broad support from most Western allies, and particularly the U.S., is aware that President Joe Biden is under more and more pressure to push Israel for an end to the killing. Yet this desperation is evident in a seemingly unstemmable tide of preposterous claims. Even the tactics appear to be shifting. Israel's usual strategy has been to try and claim Palestinians are exaggerating or making up their casualties, the so-called Pallywood technique. On October 14th, for example, the MFA-run Israel account claimed that Palestinians were trying to pass off a doll as a dead Palestinian child. This was false. The boy, 4-year-old Omar Bilal al-Banana, was was killed by an Israeli airstrike. He was real, not a fake nurse with a stethoscope. As the war has progressed, the so-called crisis actors trope has become harder to defend, with the undeniable evidence of mass civilian atrocities. This partially explains why Israel seems to be ramping up its disinformation, but it also might explain why the disinformation is getting more sinister. On November 12th, the IDF claimed to have found an unnoted and pristine copy of Mein Kampf in a child's bedroom in Gaza. This came shortly after the Israel account also posted a cartoon showing how Israel brings up its babies with love, while Gazans are brought up on hate. Remember that video we all watched yesterday where there were kids singing about murdering Gazans? Isn't that great? All this on the back of Netanyahu's now infamous deleted tweet, where he stated that the current war was one between the children of light and the children of darkness. In a worrying aspect of though is how it seeks to dehumanize Palestinian children. After all, if you can't deny killing, maybe try and portray them as children worth killing. In Israel's increasingly desperate disinformation, we can see the foundations of a disturbing campaign, attempting to try and justify or legitimize an impossible-to-justify statistic. that of the over 11,000 civilians killed in Gaza since October 7th, according to the Ministry of Health, over 4,500 are children. That makes sense because the largest cohort of people in Gaza are children. They're the largest cohort that exists, people under the age of 18. So here you have, like, the Daily Beast. Who owns the Daily Beast again? I feel like the Daily Beast is like literally far right. Daily Beast ownership. I feel like the Daily Beast is literally like Steve Bannon, right? Isn't that right? I keep forgetting who owns this. But it's not like the Daily Wire. Like the Daily Wire is Shapiro. We seek scoops, scandals, and stories about secret worlds. Focus Apollo founded in 2008. It's owned by IAC and Silver King spun off. I just want to know who owns this thing. That's all. I know that they're not going to be like, they don't want to be upfront about that. Here you go. Victor Kaufman, Barry Diller. Oh, okay. So it's just like a bunch of people you've never heard of. In any case, like, it's falling apart, right? It's falling apart. The whole narrative, the whole thing. It's so clear and obvious that it's like comically fake. And I feel like if it wasn't for the fact that I'm like used to this, like I feel like I'm a little numb to this very thing that I'm about to talk about, but like, how stupid do they think we are? Right? Like, look at how stupid they think we are. If I was like a regular citizen and this is the shit that they were trying to peddle, I would be furious. I would be outraged at how stupid they think you are. Like, they think you're a fucking moron. That they're going to absolutely just like, they're going to point at a schedule, at a calendar and say, this is Hamas's guard schedule. And everyone's going to go, you mean just like days of the week, like a normal calendar, right? Like think about the people who they said this and they went, oh, Hamas had a schedule. That's damning evidence. And then literally learning that it's just like, no, just days of the week. There's just nothing there. Right? Like, I feel like they're actively alienating even their own supporters. But the reality of the situation is that at this stage in the game, if you're pro-Zionist at this point, you're not living in a place of reason, right? You're not living in a place of rationality, right? Like, here's an excerpt from the Times of Israel. This is from back in 2022, so about a little over a year ago now. But this gives you a sense of the type of mindset that these Zionists actually have. This has been propagating around recently, so I figured I'd bring our attention to it. From the Times of Israel: to dislike certain ethnicities is racist. To see Jews as equal is anti-Semitic. That means, here's the excerpt, that when one says that Jews are just like everyone else, you're a bigot. You don't need to look down on Jews to be anti-Semitic. The entire point of the article is that, yes, Jews are not the only nation, not just based on practice, location, or belief. Jews are the only people based on an assignment. And their divinely ordained task is to be exemplary to all of humanity, to be God's ambassadors on earth, fighting for the good of everyone. That means that when one says Jews are just like everyone else, you're a bigot. You don't need to look down on Jews to be anti-Semitic. So I say that I'm better than you. And if you disagree with that, then you're the problem. Huh? Huh? Isn't it just great how, like, obviously psychopathic this entire culture is? Isn't it just great how these Zionists are obviously, yes, so Jews are the master race. It's so obvious. It says so in this magic book I have. And if you disagree, then you're the anti-Semite. Bro. Like, I cannot... You know what? I can. I can believe that this was published. I can believe it. You know, I was about to say I can't believe that this was published, but I can. Like, we are cracking open and staring into the dark pit of humanity. What can happen to an entire culture, and what can happen to an entire people if you just allow this sort of absurdist thinking to persist? If this is what you fund, right? Like, fundamentally, this is what happens under capitalism. That capitalists need the most murderous and the most psychopathic people to be in charge to enact their goals. And the most murderous and the most psychopathic people are routinely this master race shit. It's routinely these people who are like, yeah, I'm completely willing to go over there and obliterate those people because they're subhuman and that the resources that they have are mine. Right? And so capital funds them because they're willing to enact the goals of capital, which is to get access to those resources and to get access to that land. Right? It's a trope at this point. It's like the most normal shit under capital at this stage in the game. And if you want to get rid of people who think this way, if you want to obliterate from the discourse people who think this way, then you need to be rid of the system of capital. Because it's the system of capital that are funding these people. That no one would ever, like, if somebody stood in front of me and said, I'm a superior race than you, I would just be like, okay, we're not friends. I'm completely isolating you. I'm not inviting you places, right? Go off and die in the corner, you weird little incel, right? Off you go. Like, off you go. But the fact that they have $1 billion, right? So they can stand up and they can fund an entire media apparatus, like the Times of Israel, for example, to spread this garbage into the society. And once people, yeah, as a Jew, I just want to say the article is straight up insane. Yeah. Again, I will always make this distinction when I'm in this conversation. I think it's a very important distinction to make, and it needs to be explicitly stated over and over and over and over again, because come on, they're going to come after me as an anti-Semite, for sure. We are not discussing Jews. We are discussing Zionists. We make a distinction between Judaism, Israelis, and Zionists. Just like one would make a distinction between Germans and Nazis, one makes a distinction between Israelis, Jews, and Zionists. This is a distinction that the people who are in favor of this genocide, people like Ben Shapiro, just refuse to make. Right? Which fundamentally, in my view, is actually anti-Semitic. The idea that Zionists represent all of us and we are all the same. Like, what? Obviously false. Obviously not. I have been divinely ordained to tell you to shut the fuck up, yeah. Speaking of history, says Watson, David North did a lecture in the UK about a week and a half ago about the history of the Fourth International and the anti-socialist character of Zionism. Yeah, good. I think there's lots of interesting information that's come out recently. Noam Chomsky has been going on talking about the Ottoman Empire and talking about their response to this plan to introduce Jews and a Jewish state into Palestine, which I think is very useful because a lot of the narrative that goes around from the pro-Zionist crowd is that Israel has a right to exist because of what happened in like 1948. And it's like, well, the story doesn't start in 1948. Just like how history doesn't start October 7th, right? History doesn't start in 1948. It starts in history, in fact, starts before the existence of humanity. Did you know? I just find it always so funny how like conservatives will literally say to black people, slavery was so long ago, forget about it. But then look at Jews being like, 4,000 years ago, we lived here. And be like, oh, yeah, 4,000 years ago. Yeah, that's a genuine claim that you certainly have. Right? Yeah, by the way, one does not have to be Jewish to be a Zionist. Yeah, so says Joe Biden, right? President of the United States. He says that he is a Zionist. He's explicitly said you don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. I am a Zionist, right? That Joe Biden. Probably his most important quote. There's been a lot of important quotes that have come out of Joe Biden. Quotes like, Israel is the best investment that we as Americans have made. If Israel didn't exist, we'd have to invent it. Those are great quotes that come out of Joe Biden. Like, Joe Biden has just been a never-ending, like just a never-ending deluge of amazing, like, crazy genocidal nonsense. We'll push him to the left, though. Yeah. Would it be wrong to self-identify as a Jew? Like, I don't know how to answer this, Ward. I don't. I just am not positioned for it. Like, my question would be, like, why are you doing it? Like, to what end? For what purpose? To like, are you going to be, like, you can convert to Judaism, but, like, to self-identify as, like, an ethnic Jew, you know? Like, I'm like, I'm not the guy to talk to on this one, I think. I think you want to talk to the Jews, is who you'd like to talk to. Winston Churchill wrote an article in the Daily Mail in January or February of 1920 with the title, Zionism or Bolshevism. Yeah, I think clarification needed, Ward. Good to see you, by the way, my man. I'll always say it every single time you show up, Ward. Ward was the first person to donate any money to me. He was the first person. It was the moment when I realized I could do this. This can be done. There are people out there who are that there are people out there who are going to support what I am doing, and it was Ward. He was the first person to ever do it. And so, Ward, you always will have a special place in my heart, for sure. Since when is Judaism? Oh, so Judaism, right? Like, yeah. Like, what's interesting about Judaism is that, like, unlike many other faiths, like, most Christian faiths will be like, oh, you want to convert to Christianity? Great. Like, here's the process of the conversion to Christianity. And it's usually very easy. You want to convert to Catholicism? There's like a little thing that you got to do, and you got to talk to a priest and all that kind of stuff, right? Thank you, Ward. I appreciate that. I grew it just for you. But Judaism, not Judaism. Judaism. I'm mispronouncing it. I've always called it Judaism. Judaism. What am I doing? Now I don't know what I'm doing, June. Thanks, June. My understanding is that, like, if you walked in and you said, hey, I'd like to convert to Judaism, if you'd like to convert to Judaism, I think the rabbi would just be like, no, thanks. It's always been my understanding, like, that the Jews are like, no, we're good. Like, we're Jews. Like, if you want to convert to Judaism, it's like a process. It's not like you walk in the front door and they, like, splash your head with water and a priest is like, and now you're a Catholic. Go in peace, right? Like, it's like they're very skeptical of you if you come in and are like, I would like to convert to Judaism. And so I think that a person could for sure do this. Like, I don't think that anything exists that's going to stop you. But the Jews themselves are absolutely going to be like, why? Who are you? What are you here for? Like, why? Like, we were born into it. What's your excuse? And so there is like a conversion process. And there's nothing wrong with it. I just think that you're going to encounter, like, there's hurdles. There's hurdles. They want you to mean it. Like, I've known people who, and they were like in this very like psychedelic, like, the world is peace and love, man. We should be able to do whatever we want. And they converted to Islam. Went through it was not a difficult process to convert to Islam. And their goal was to convert to all of the world religions, to like go through, and I think that they were being very sort of sweet, but like, you know, world religions are not like, you know, you can't take a tour, you know what I mean? You're just kind of being like a tourist, if you know what I mean. And I said to them, right? Yeah, like, if you try to do that with Judaism, you're going to get a hard no. Like, I think that like the Muslims that they were speaking to were just happy to be acknowledged by, you know, white Canadians. But like, if you walk up to some rabbis, the rabbis are just going to be like, thanks, but no thanks. Especially if you tell them what your plan is. Yeah, I'm planning on just sort of taking a tour through your religion. The bloodline thing kind of freaks me out. I mean, that's like like, what makes Judaism interesting is that there is like a lot of layers to it, right? Like, there's a lot of like, there's like ethnic Jews. There are people who are within the ethnicity of of Jewishness, and then there's the religion of Judaism, and then there's also sects within that religion, right? And because they're like, they've been historically a very like closed group, you know, historically, and it's a group that supports one another very strongly, and there's a long history. The fact that Jews exist as an ethnicity, given the history of what's happened to them, is actually pretty impressive. Like, it's pretty interesting. Like, if you actually read like the Torah, they've been dislocated and blown apart and have had terrible things happen to them, and then relocated and then dislocated and then relocated again. It's just pretty wild, actually. So the idea that there is this ethnicity, that there are like ethnic Jews, and they're still seen, and they even see themselves as ethnic Jews, is pretty interesting. It's an interesting aspect of this sort of small group of people who have managed to maintain their identity, their cultural identity together. It's pretty cool, actually. Yeah, Zionism is basically a European Jewish thing. Actual Semitic Jews are not so thrilled with Zionism. Yeah, there are groups within Judaism that are not pleased with Zionism and have stood up against them and have stood out against them, right? I feel like that's definitely in the discourse. Not that we would ever see that in the mainstream. Not that we would ever actually have a serious discussion about any of this. Yeah, Jews are not an ethnic monolith. Yep, that's for sure. Like, this is what I'm saying, Leon. Like, it's and for complete and total clarity, I am not the expert on this. Like, for sure. Like, when it comes to Jewish ethnicity, when it comes to even Judaism, right? I'm not the expert. That I'm just sort of talking about my perception of what that is, and trying to be as nice about it as I possibly can, because right now we're dealing with what is obviously a form of Nazism, right? Like, we can all agree and I know that, the Nazis won't, but that Zionism is a form of Nazism, that it's on that same kind of level, right? And we can all kind of, so we've got to talk about it, right? It's cool, bro. I'll be your anti-Zionist Jewish whisperer. Yeah, please. I need the help. I need the help. So I'm somewhat forced to discuss it, right? That's what it is that I'm forced to discuss it. And I'm not in a place where I'm an expert. My expertise lies outside of Judaism, for sure. All I know is that Zionists are Nazis, and that's pretty obvious, right? Like, so I think while I make the distinction, I'm not an expert on, like, my experience with Judaism is as a Christian, right? I grew up as a Christian. And so we have this sort of connection to Jews, and we have this, although Christians are very weird about Jews generally, and like have a very strange perception of how the Jews are, and we have this like disconnect where it all circles around the figure of Christ, and it's like a weird little story. We have to define ethnicity. All right, Ward. Ethnicity definition. Yeah, Zionism is a form of Judeo-supremacy, for sure. The quality of or fact of belonging to a population, group, or subgroup made up of people who share a common cultural background or descent. Right? Like, the issue with ethnicity as a concept is that it's somewhat vague, and it can be vague, right? Because it is like, you generally came from this region during this period of time and share these sorts of stories and this kind of thing generally, and that's persisting through time. And then, of course, if you were to speak to that group, you would realize that there are divides within that group. And then if you were to go into the divide of one of the subsects of the divisions of that group, you would find that there are divisions there too. And then you basically boil it down and you really realize that, like, oh, everybody's like a unique person in and of themselves and has their ideas, but they're all kind of within this umbrella where they share this kind of background. And like it's vague on purpose. Well, it's not vague on purpose. It is just like, you can't, because we're all fucking human. Like, that's the thing. Like, we're all just human. And so the very concept of ethnicity is just us being like, well, there are people who believe different types of stories, and there are people who come from different regions, and there are people who have different ideas about how they should live in the world, and so we'll call those ethnicities. And is it useful? Is this a useful thing to even have? Is it even a useful way to discuss? Like, why can't we just say, oh, that's an interesting story that you and that, your friends tell, right? But no, we got to like put a little circle around it and say ethnicity. And then some people are very proud of this, and they're very much like, yes, this is our story, and this is what we do, and this is our thing. And then one group goes after another group, and then they're drawing lines, and it just gets... that guy. A group of people with a distinct cultural and social tradition. We just love inbreeding, so we're more genetically isolated. That's you that said that guy. We here at the Canadian Commie. I think the Ward's just trying to make sense of it all. Honestly. I'm with you, Ward. That's essentially what I'm doing here, right? Like, what is all this? Right? What is all this, Ward? It all seems so fucking crazy, doesn't it? Like, it's all just wild the whole time. Every time I look at this, and especially with what's going on in the Middle East, I'm just like, what the fuck? What in the fuck? Like, one of the things that I think is absolutely crazy and absolutely wild to me. Oopzilla, good to see you. I'm going to get to your comment. One of the things that's absolutely wild to me is how much energy we're willing to put into this crazy shit, right? Like, how much energy we're putting into all of it. Like, if we put in a third of the energy that we put into destroying ourselves into just like making sure everybody had food and shelter, things would be so much better. Like, things would be so much better. We would just be having a much better time. Things would be so much easier. Oopzilla. It's part of the Western strategy, conflating religious ideology with their race science. It helps hide their agenda. The Jews who are driving the Zionist push are mostly white, Anglo-Eastern European. Just like Islam and Christianity, people of all colors can follow Judaism. Yeah, and I think I think there's something to that. Like, the Zionists are not being, like, they're being disingenuous about their faith. Obviously, like, sorry guys, like, if your religion says it's cool to commit a genocide because God said so, then maybe not, right? Maybe not. Oh, thanks for the donation, Ward. I appreciate that, my man. I do. I appreciate that. This conversation in particular, Ward, and I think is a difficult one, and it's a very sensitive one, right? And that's why I'm pretty I don't know what word I'm groping for here, but I'm groping for a word. I'm pretty, forgiving's not the word, but, like, I'm pretty, like, understanding about people coming in the conversation being like, what's going on up in here? And the trouble, of course, is that with doing that, especially in this moment, is that it raises a lot of suspicion. People get very suspicious, right? When somebody comes in and starts asking these sorts of questions, people are like, what's up, bro? Like, why are you talking this way? You know? And when the truth is, like, we're all just trying to figure this shit out. Like, what is all this shit? Like, why is it this way? Like, what is this? Like, it's so, and when you actually start pulling on the thread and you actually start trying to figure it all out, you're literally pulling a thread that goes back through history and through time. And in this particular case, back through history and back through time, like hundreds of years and sometimes thousands of years, you're pulling on this thread. It's crazy. Like, it's wild. How can anybody decipher anything and make sense of any of this stuff while this is what's going on? When in reality, we could all just look at one another and be like, hey, you just want to smoke doobs and chill out? Like, why with this? Why are we funding gigantic military organizations to do any of this stuff? Like, why? Why are we waking up and getting into these automobiles to go to these jobs that we hate in order to do nothing? Like, why? For what? What are we doing? Like, what are we fucking doing with any of this? Like, it's so crazy. Like, we're not just, like, sitting around telling different stories to one another. We're literally, like, purging people over it. It's crazy. It's just fucking crazy what we're up to. Right? I like that my chat is basically having a conversation about inbreeding right now. That's fun. This seems to keep happening in my chat. Why are we constantly having conversations about inbreeding and incest recently? I gotta tell you guys. Well, I'm gonna pull back on this. I don't know about these conversations. So, in other news, right? Danielle Smith, the leader of the Albertan Conservative Party, the current premier of Alberta, Trudeau Liberal government is lawless. Smith says she's still going to press the feds on their plan for electricity, but time is running out. Like, a premier of the country, of the province that makes the most money, right? The wealthiest province, by far, it's not close, Alberta, has just said that the ruling federal government is lawless. Like, if this doesn't inspire ideation towards separation, I don't know what else will. Like, I've been saying over and over and over again on this chat that the most likely thing that we're going to see, maybe possibly not within our lifetimes, but definitely soon enough, is the splitting up of the country, right? That, like a Brexit moment, a balkanization. Although I don't know that I'm using this balkanization phrase correctly any longer, but that the country will generally break apart, which is the most likely thing to happen when empires fall into decay. And so I'm constantly looking for evidence of this, and for and for signs that this is actually beginning to happen. Well, a premier of the wealthiest province in Canada standing up and saying of the federal government that they are lawless. Like, what's going to happen? What I think is going to be so interesting to see, right, is that here in Canada, there is this thought that has taken hold of huge sections of the populace. At least 40% of the populace right now is basically going, fuck Trudeau, let's get rid of Trudeau, we're going to vote Conservative. It's looking like the Conservatives are going to take control of the federal government. But the Conservatives are not going to resolve any of this. The Conservatives are going to continue the policies of extraction and abandonment that exist within the free market capitalist mindset. And so what's going to happen then? That's what's going to be so interesting, is that huge segments of the populace are going to vote for Conservative and then recognize very quickly. I think it's going to take a year, maybe two, for people to realize, oh, these guys aren't actually doing anything. Nothing's getting better, right? That their strategy is literally build more housing for billionaires to own, right? That they will stand up and be like, look how much more housing we built. And people will be like, well, why didn't the prices come down? And it's because we sold it all to billionaires. We sold it all to BlackRock, right? And by the way, you're the one paying for the housing to be built. So your taxes are going to have to go up while we sell these projects that we had built to billionaires. Can't imagine why prices aren't coming down. We just gave more assets to the billionaire class on your tax money, right? So when nothing changes, and in fact when things get worse, because they're going to privatize a bunch of stuff too, right? What's the populace going to do then, right? And we've seen again and again that the populace is not capable of rational thought. It is like a wild animal, and it's going to get even more hysterical. It's going to become more hysteria based. And where it's going to turn and what it's going to do next is going to be completely unpredictable. We could straight up see like a huge swell towards the People's Party of Canada, the PPC, right? We could suddenly see a huge upswell towards the left and the NDP see a resurgence. But we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know where it's going to go. And it's going to be like a wild animal, a wounded wild animal responding. And it's going to be crazy. It's going to be a wild time. Ward says, or just a return to the concept of confederation? I don't know that I understand your comment, Ward. Like, my position has always been that when empires fall into decline, the most likely thing for them to do is break apart, to see a general breaking apart. And that's more or less what we're going to see. And that you can't simply, like, you can't build a federated body without federated projects. That's just the truth, is that you can't actually keep a people who like, you can't keep a nation that's this large together without having some kind of unifying principles. And the only unifying principle we have right now is war, right? That we are othering a group of people and committing genocides against them and fighting them overseas, right? That's our unifying principle. Well, that doesn't work. That doesn't work in the long term. And so as the society becomes more and more impoverished, as the society begins to experience an upswell of poverty, and as the society begins to become more and more abandoned, well, the society is not going to tolerate a federated body that's actively seeking to abandon it as effectively and efficiently as ours does. And as we lose prestige on the world stage, and as we begin to fall apart, and as unemployment begins to spread, or as the employment that exists is basically just wage slave level subsistence living, people are going to become less and less accommodating to the idea that we should pay taxes or tolerate a federated body that's abandoning us so effectively, right? Like the Trudeau government is abandoning us. To call it anything other than wholesale abandonment, I don't know what your position is. Like, what are you talking about? And when the Conservatives take power, that abandonment is going to get more thorough and it's going to get faster, right? And we're seeing that within like the Conservative governments that have taken power across the country provincially. Like what the Ford government has done to Ontario is like a complete and total abomination. The fact that people are not actually screaming constantly about how the Ford administration outright destroyed our economy day one. Like destroyed it. Day one, came in and basically just completely kiboshed any idea of economic growth. Put up a sign that said, we're selling everything off. Right? Like, so basically destroyed the economy day one. The economy of Ontario is as good as the economy of Alabama at this point. Right? Like it's over, it's done, and it's obvious. We literally have like major organizations like the OECD saying that Canada is going to be the worst in terms of its development over the next 30 years. Like it's basically over for us. And citizens are not going to basically look at their paycheck and go, oh, wow, yeah, the federal government is taking all this money. And what am I getting for it? Oh, is it fucking nothing? Oh, I'm getting fucking nothing. And it's especially going to become obvious as they begin privatizing the healthcare system, which is their goal. Cuckery is buckery. Oh, every time you're in, man, I laugh. I don't understand your name, but it makes me laugh anyway. Do you think Joe Biden is capable of serving another term? Sure. Like, they'll just keep him on a respirator, right? Like, he's just a ghoul anyway, right? Like, he's just like a little vampiric ghoul. So they'll just cart him out to have a speech every so often, just jam some Adderall into him, right? Have him snort some coke. And he'll go up there and be like, America's the greatest country in America, and God bless America, and we will defend Israel's right to defend itself, and everybody will go. And that'll be it. Right? Yeah, of course he can serve another term. I am looking forward to the debate between him and Donald Trump. That's really what I'm looking forward to. That I think that Donald Trump in a debate with Joe Biden is going to be just absolutely beautiful. Because I think that Donald Trump is just going to lay him out. And is just going to lay out all this crazy shit. And I think the first time they had their series of debates, Joe Biden was... because he was so... because he's demented, right? Because he has dementia and because he's so incapable of actually defending himself. Trump actually came off looking pretty bad because he just looked like a bully. He just looked like he was bullying a defenseless old man because that's kind of what he was doing, right? And so he tried to change and alter his course. And I think people were sympathetic to Joe Biden because they were exhausted with Donald Trump. There was a lot of like exhaustion surrounding Donald Trump at that time. So people were like, hey, you shouldn't be talking that way to Joe. Joe's trying his best out here, you know. But now people, I think most people see through Joe Biden and they realize that, yeah, sure, he has dementia. Sure, he's like a decrepit ghoul of an old man. Sure. But he's also like a villain, right? He's a genocide supporter. He doesn't give a fuck about anything but his own wealth and prestige and power. He doesn't care. He doesn't give a fuck about you. He doesn't care. And so Donald Trump's going to come out there and he's going to lay Joe Biden out with and talk basically about what his record is, and people are going to be like, yeah, get rid of this fucking old ghoul. Get rid of this decrepit old man. If the Democratic Party is smart, which they're not, but if they were, they would have Joe Biden step down. That he would already be stepping down, because like he's too old for this. He's not capable, and he's obviously not in charge. Right? He's obviously not calling the shots or running the show. He's not making decisions. You have that moment where people ask him like, so in the past you have said that Xi Jinping is a dictator. Do you still hold that position? And Joe Biden goes, well, he is a dictator. And Anthony Blinken's just like, why are you saying that out loud, you dumb old man? Like Joe Biden's a liability. He's a liability all the way around, and he should step down. If the Democrats were smart, they would make him step down, but they're not smart, right? They're not smart. They're not self-aware. They think that they're the good guys when they're just another pack of fucking hyenas, right? Like they got their blue mega cult. The whole like, oh, it was the Russians. Hillary didn't win because of the Russians. This is a serious thing. Yeah, we're serious people. We certainly didn't lose because Hillary Clinton is a fucking vampire. Certainly didn't lose because she's a genocidal warmonger that is absolutely responsible for one of the worst abominations in the modern era. Yeah, the destruction of Libya, you know, that's a normal thing that normal people should do normally, right? And one of the narratives that I think is really going to take hold in the campaign, right? And one of the things that Donald Trump is going to say, right? He's going to say it, and I think a lot of people are going to go like, that is actually true, right? That he's going to say, "Where's my war?" But the reason why he got elected in the first place, the reason he started gaining in prominence in the first place, is because he's one of the few Republicans that was actually willing to stand up and say that the Iraq War was a disaster, shouldn't have ever happened. If it had been me, it would have never happened, right? If it had been me, would have never happened, right? We would have negotiated, we would have come to a deal, right? And so that gained him a lot of support and a lot of prominence. He absolutely destroyed Jeb Bush, right, over this, and then he gets power. Where's his war? So you've got George W. Bush with the Iraq-Afghanistan war. You've got Obama with the Libyan war, right, and the spreading of war throughout the region. Then you got Donald Trump. Well, where's Donald Trump's war? Like, you can point to him like managing the wars. You could point to him managing that stuff. Right, and then you jump on over to Joe Biden, Ukrainian war, the Gazan genocide, and so Donald Trump's going to stand up and be like, "There was only one presidency in the last 40 years where he didn't start a new war, and it was Donald Trump's presidency." And people are going to look at that and be like, "That is true." Yeah, okay, a trade war. It's not a war. Right? And Trump would say, that's just business. We're just doing business. Right? Like, and I think most people are going to absolutely look at that and be like, that is actually true. And the pendulum's going to swing towards Trump. Like, I think Trump wins this next election. I don't think it's going to be very close. Like, really, I don't think it's going to be very close. I don't think it's going to be great. I don't support Donald Trump. But I don't pretend as though Donald Trump is worse than the Democrats, right? Like, I don't pretend as though like the Republicans are worse for certain groups and the Democrats are worse for other groups, right? Like, that's what it is. And so it makes sense that certain groups would support Democrats and certain groups would support Republicans, and that's all done on purpose. Right? That the capitalists want the society to be at each other's throat. They want to divide workers and have those workers be at each other's throats. That's what they want. That's how they manage us. Right? So it's done on purpose. And Donald Trump's going to win the next election. at least under Trump, trans people were exempt from military service. Yeah, I worry about trans people under a Trump presidency. I mean, I think that there is something to be said about simple culture shifts, and that the people who are talking about like wokeness, right, and the anti-trans people will certainly feel empowered under a Trump presidency. I think that that's 100% true. Trump has made it crystal clear that he will 100% isn't real. Yeah. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that he's going to come in like a god king or anything. Like, I'm not saying that Trump's going to come in and then peace will reign. That's not what I'm going to say. I'm just saying what he's going to say. And it's going to be believable. We got a fellow on Twitch by the name of Telepath. You lived in the USSR? What are you talking about, bro? Like, look at my age. Really think about what you say. Like, we can analyze things and we can talk about them if you would like. Man. This new rash of pro-capitalist people who have come in trying to defend the system of capital have been real wild. Like, it's just getting more hysterical. Like, it's just getting more hysterical, and it's just becoming a bigger hysteria every single time. Like, yeah, Trump is going to clean up. I hate it, but Dems let this happen. We'll see how it goes. The Gazan genocide has been a real, like, people are abandoning Joe Biden. Like, Joe Biden is experiencing total abandonment right now, because, like, it is a moment where the entire narrative falls apart, right? Like, we'll push him to the left. He's actually going to do stuff. He's the new FDR. All the kind of narrative stuff. Like, he's literally explicitly supporting a genocide. Like, just explicitly supporting a genocide. I'm sorry, man. Like, this puts Joe Biden the furthest to the right. Like, at least with the invasions and the wars that happened under Obama and happened under Bush, there's the concept and the idea that it's actually a war, right? That we're going in there and invading and spreading democracy and we're protecting our own interests and all this kind of stuff. Like, what are you doing there? What are you doing in Gaza? Like, you're not protecting your interests in Gaza. You're embarking on a project of extermination for, like, the pettiest, dumbest possible reasons. Even if you believe fully in the idea of American exceptionalism and the idea that we should be over there spreading our ideology and all this kind of stuff, it's like, even if you believe in that the project of Greater Israel is ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and it can't succeed. Like, it's so fucking ridiculous what you're doing. It's just wild. Yeah, Trump is another figurehead. Yeah, common folk don't want war. What makes Trump unique is that he is not a figurehead. Like, someone like Joe Biden is completely controlled by the system of capital. He's a figurehead of capital, right? Trump is a consequence of capital. He's not a figurehead of capital. He's not controlled by the system of capital. He's just a consequence of it. And that's what makes him unique in the political discourse, is that, like, the like BlackRock and Vanguard and all of these guys, they basically own Joe Biden, right? And Joe Biden is completely complicit and completely, like, he's absolutely, like, he goes into meetings with these guys and he's like, hey, how you doing? Yeah, oh, that's what you want done. Okay, cool. Right? Trump's not like that, right? That Trump is still allied and within the system of capital, but he's not their puppet. If you understand what I mean, like, he's just a consequence. He's just that. He's just the system of capital personified and acting on its own accord. And Trump often does things that are beneficial for the system of capital because he's a consequence of capital, but he's not their thrall. So he's an interesting figure in that way. And I think that's why people like him and support him, is because they see that he is kind of his own, what they would call his own man, even though he is definitely a product of the system of capital and definitely works within the system of capital for his own benefit. but he's not a servant of capital. He's a product of capital. So that makes him different. That makes him different than like Chris Christie. That makes him different than Marco Rubio. It makes him different than the Bushes, right? I mean, Trump doesn't control capital, obviously. Like he is a capital holder. He is a capitalist in his own right. But he doesn't like control the Bank of America. Like he doesn't control BlackRock, right? And moreover, he's not interested in controlling those institutions. He's not interested in that. He's not interested in like his ire has always been against the democratic system itself. Drain the swamp and all that kind of talk, right? Which, if I'm a capital holder, I'm like, yeah, okay, go ahead with that. Drain the swamp, sure, right? Like it's he's not a threat to capital, right? He's just something that the capitalists now have to deal with. He's just a new factor, right? That before he showed up, the system was more or less in hand. Right? That the system of neoliberal capital was basically in hand, and they were gently passing the ball between one another, right? Never forget, I think one of the things that one of the moments that was deeply radicalizing for me was when the Obama administration had control of the House, control of the Senate, control of the White House, and still couldn't get anything done. Right? Like that was the moment when I was like, oh, this is a game. This isn't real. This isn't real actual politics. That your party has control of the White House, control of the Senate, and control of the House in supermajority ways. Like it's not close. You don't need to negotiate or debate or anything. And what was the narrative that came out during that period of time? We want to sit down with the Republicans and talk things through. So it's over. Like the whole idea that this is actually politics is unserious, right? Like if the Democrats were an actual political party, they would be like, oh, cool, we have total power. We have the House, we've got the Senate, we've got the White House. What's the legislation that we want through? Pass it. What's the legislation that we want through? Pass it. Make the Republicans deal with it on the electoral circuit. But they didn't do that. They didn't pass anything. They didn't do anything. They expanded the wars. They basically took the Bush administration's policies and just moved them forward, right? It's theater. It's completely theater. Freelance Boxer, good to see you. TCC, I don't know what TCC means, but what's up? What's up with you, my man? Good to see you. Profit motive is on its way out, but the replacement is not clear. I mean, the profit motive is not on its way out. like the religious ideology of capital, because that's what it's become, right? It's not a rational force. It's a religious ideology. It's absolutely still taking hold, and it's absolutely still here. And people are absolutely still motivated by the profit motive in big and serious ways. And it's absolutely going to continue destroying itself. And it's going to continue resulting in the things that it results in. And it's just going to be constantly imploding. And it's going to happen faster. Because what we're seeing now is basically just rats escaping from a sinking ship, right? It's basically just everybody hauling up as much wealth as they can for themselves and trying to escape to their palaces and to their gated communities. That's what we are looking at. And that's based entirely on profit motive. That's based entirely on make more money for myself. And what is changing is that the populace is beginning to see that we can't organize along those lines. But the populace no longer has any institutions or institutional power anywhere. The institutions that existed for the benefit of the populace through narrative have completely revealed themselves to be fraudulent and incredulous. They no longer have credibility. And the people don't know what to do. They don't know how to act, and they don't know where to turn. right? The churches have abandoned them. The banks have abandoned them. The medical systems have abandoned them. The systems of education have abandoned them. The cultural institutions have abandoned them. Like there's nothing left. And so when you live in a society that has these kinds of power vacuums, when you live in a society that operates this way, where there's just nobody has credibility, there's no laws, there's no rules, you don't need to listen to anybody, there's no expert, right? You don't need to take seriously what anybody has to say about anything, because nobody's actually working for the benefit of you at all, ever. So why should you listen to what anybody has to say about anything? When you live in this sort of situation, what you end up with is frauds. You just end up with charlatans and frauds, and you end up with weird little kooky cults, and you end up with weird little situations where people are just trying to make sense of the world around them. And so they fall underneath people who are at least giving them a narrative that makes some kind of sense, that has any kind of cohesion and talks about what can be done and what you should do. And this is why you have people like Shapiro and Peterson in the conversation, right? Because the narrative that they are giving makes a type of sense. That you can do it, buck up, work harder, right, is at least a narrative that makes a type of sense. It becomes incoherent once it begins interacting with reality, but reality has become so incoherent and ridiculous now that people are really having a tough time deciphering between what is real and what is fake. But what they know is that I am real and I am here and I can rely on myself. And so it's about making myself stronger, and it's about working harder for myself and making good decisions for myself. And I can't rely on these frauds and these losers and these institutions that have abandoned me. So I'm going to do everything I can to improve myself. And if people and these other guys, these communists that are out here saying that we can build institutions and create institutional force, what a bunch of losers. They just want welfare, right? They want us all to come together and make collective decisions. Yeah, because that's really working. You know what I can do? I can sell my entire life and sell my soul to a system of capital that'll actually improve the quality of my life. And here's the thing, is that sometimes it does. Like, that's the thing. That if your whole way of thinking is I'm completely willing to sell my entire consciousness to the system of capital, oh, hey, I got a truck. Right? There you go. It worked. Right? It worked. And at least that worked better than the nothing that was happening previously, because you've been completely abandoned by a system of capital. You've been completely abandoned by all institutions. Well, you know what you can do? Go out and work harder. Work an 80-hour work week, right? Oh, hey, look, you got a nicer house. Oh, hey, look, you got a big truck. You didn't have that before. System works, right? Bugatti. Right? You're escaping the matrix. Right? But these narratives only work because there's literally nothing else. Because the airwaves have been completely suppressed. The idea that we could be like, hey, we could collectively come together and make collective decisions for the benefit of all, that's been completely suppressed and completely chased out of the conversation. Right? Yeah, just reinvest back into the system of capital. That's how you escape the matrix, right? That's your Andrew Tate shit right there, right? All you got to do is exploit everybody around you. Wake up every morning with the idea that to be a man is to exploit everyone around you and to toughen up, right? Chase that Bugatti. That's how you escape the matrix, is by selling yourself more effectively to the system of capital. And that's essentially what these guys stand for, right? But at least it's a narrative. At least it's something that says out loud, hey, there's a system of thought that actually exists and is concrete, as opposed to the nothing that exists in our society because we're a cultural wasteland completely. Yeah, all you need to do is take a cold shower and wake up 2 hours earlier. You could do it. You can do it. So if the choice is between total abandonment in the society, homelessness, poverty, and nothing, or buck up and work harder, right? Just sell yourself to the system of capital. Well, people will just sell themselves to the system of capital. And those who find success in that are trained and taught that they should look down with contempt on those who can't do it, who are actually abandoned, right? Which is an inevitability within the system of capital. It's an inevitability that there will be huge segments of the population that will experience that abandonment. Just how it's an inevitability that there will be a small segment of people who the system of capital will find to be useful, right? That the system of capital will find managers, lawyers, engineers. Like, yeah, I would like things built as a billionaire. I am a billionaire. I need someone to manage my accounts. I am a billionaire. I need somebody to build the projects, the lunatic yachts and the dumb shit that I need built, right? And because there's only one billionaire, they don't need that many of those people. And so those people will come and work for the billionaire. And of course the billionaire is going to say, yeah, I need you to work an 80-hour work week. If you're not interested in that, you can go fuck off, right? And so they've created an entire ideology around this idea of sell yourself to me completely in my thrall and say thank you when you do it, right? That's how you escape the matrix, right? That's how you get your Bugatti, is by completely selling your consciousness to the system of capital and working for me. And if you're willing to do that, then we're going to be friends. And that's basically what's happening in the society today. And so we need to create a counter narrative. And that's where I come in. Hello, here I am. Counter narrative. Right? You deserve better than this. You deserve to have a life. You deserve to exist outside of a system of capital. You deserve to exist in a society that exists to support you and exists to support your life. You don't need to earn the right to live. You don't need to earn the right to live. Any system that refuses to provide food and shelter for its citizens, any system that refuses to provide a decent standard of living for its citizens as a byproduct of its existence, is not a system that you need to tolerate. The idea that the system is saying to you that you need to justify your existence to it, that is the ideology of a demon. That system should be completely dismantled to the root of it, should be completely dismantled at the root and should be ripped out of the ground. Because it is saying to you, you do not deserve the right to have food and shelter. That you are a randomly generated being that was spawned into this reality with a need for food and shelter, and that people are exploiting that need and are saying that you must worship them instead of your creator. They are exploiting what their creator has given them for their own personal profit, and they must be defeated. Because they are basically saying, I have more authority than God. No, they don't. No, they don't. That we should create a system that says, first and foremost, the existence of this system is only made credible by the support it provides to its citizens. That if the system refuses to provide food and shelter for its citizens freely, without any excuses, then it's not a system that we need to find credible whatsoever. And the system, you'll notice, is not doing that. And what's the response that the system is making? You need to sell yourself harder to the system that's abandoning you. And look down on those who can't be successful and won't be successful through inevitability with contempt. We don't need to tolerate this any longer as a people. We need to get together with our neighbors. We need to discuss these things with our neighbors, and we need to create alternative models that exist outside of the system of capital. And say so explicitly. And say that the reason why we are doing it is because we have been abandoned by the system of capital. That we are selling ourselves and selling our souls to a system that's actively abandoning us. No more. That the greatest form of protest is to simply accept that you will end up with less and say to the system of capital, I refuse to sell my time and my labor to you any longer. Work less, sell yourself less, accept that you will have less, because that's what the system of capital is going to give you anyway. So there's no reason to sell yourself to it any longer. Starve it out. It requires your labor. Starve it out. John, if a plane is traveling at a constant speed of 60 miles per hour, how long would it take for the plane to travel 60 miles? 1 hour. 60 miles per hour, 1 hour, 60 miles. Weird. Weird question, June. Like, like, I feel like that's one of those like brain teaser tricks that like, if you have a ton of feathers and a ton of bricks, which is more heavy? Which is heavier? And people go, well, the bricks are heavier. Right. But it's a ton of feathers and it's a ton of bricks. So it's the same. Right? I remember there was this great clip of somebody did this. Or they were like, if you have a ton of feathers and a ton of bricks, which is heavier? He goes, that's right, it's the bricks. And then a friend comes in and says, no, they're equal. And the guy goes, no, the bricks are heavier than feathers. It's like, no, but they're equal. They're equal, friend. And then the whole thing ends with just a group of friends around him, and it's very clear that he just doesn't understand. He's like, but bricks are heavier than feathers. I don't understand. I don't. And it was very sad and very charming at the same time. It was just, he did a really good job. Yeah, cooperatives. This is the Richard Wolff solution, right? And what I think that there is something to it. I think that there is something to be said that turning our top-down dictatorships, our totalitarian dictatorships called businesses, into worker cooperatives, is definitely one way to communicate how we could move away from the system of capital successfully. That instead of there being a detached capitalist class looking at numbers and treating you as a number, that instead it's the people who do the work that are the decision makers, and that worker cooperatives would become a more reasonable way to actually organize these businesses. They are not without their faults, of course, and people who work within worker co-ops will let you know that, of course. But you know what worker co-ops will probably not do? They will probably not poison the very land that they need, because worker cooperatives don't exist on this idea that I can extract all of my wealth and send it to some place that nobody lives in, right? Like, that's the entire reason why the system of capital fails, is that the people who are making the decisions don't need to live with the consequences of their decisions. That they can extract all of the wealth and put it in an offshore account somewhere and then go live on Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island, and that's fine. They don't actually need to work in the warehouses. They don't actually need to live with these decisions. They don't need to actually live in the communities. They don't actually need to see. They can literally hire people to be in those places for them. And those people, of course, are trained to subserviate themselves to the system of capital, right? That's what business school is for, is to train people to be subservient to the system of capital. That's what economics departments exist for. They exist to spread around the religious ideology of capital. Because if anybody actually analyzed the system of capital from a scientific standpoint, like Marxists do, they would realize very quickly that this is an inequitable system that needs to be dismantled, and it needs to be destroyed as fast as possible. Like mainly because the system of capital is destructive, and it can't stop. It can't stop. That it must expand and exploit and destroy and consume. And if walls were ever put around the system of capital, it would just begin consuming itself, because it needs to. It can't not. It must do it. Simply because the profiteers, the people who are the owners of the society, need ever-growing profits. And they provide no value to the system. And so, like parasites do, they eventually drain the system until it dies, collapsing it into just a simple form of feudalism, right? That the system of capital cannot survive without being a parasite, and eventually will collapse back into feudalism with just new kings at the fore. We'll just call them CEOs, right? They'll just be president so and so instead of king so and so. Yeah, we must always increase our profits or else you will be fired. Yeah. And like it's and that's the ideology. That's the way it works. And the victims of the system need to come together and organize and make it explicitly clear. Just in the same way that we said no more kings, right? Well, no more CEOs, no more shareholders. Like no more shareholders. Done. That if you are going to be part of this enterprise, you should work in the enterprise. That if you're going to be part of the system, you should work within the system. That you can't just sit on a board of directors saying more money, please, because that's all they ever say. They're not decision makers, right? They hire decision makers, right? All shareholders are people that say more money for me. And then they turn to the CEO that they've hired and they say, we hired you to give us more money. More money for me. Find a way to give me more money, or we'll find somebody who will. And that's how the system, quote unquote, works. No more shareholders. No more CEOs. Get rid of these people and make it explicit. Make it explicit. And the only way it's ever going to happen is if we organize outside of the Liberal Party, outside of the Conservative Party, outside of the NDP, and outside of the system of electoral politics, and begin saying explicitly to the system, we're no longer interested in you. It's the only way it's going to ever work. And what that means is that we are going to look at a generation of people who are just going to have to accept less. But that's all the system was ever delivering. Because what it means is that you're going to have to work for the system of capital less. You're going to have to accept that you're not going to have the big house and the big cars and the Bugattis and all of that. And then that is fine. And that is acceptable. Because the most terrifying thing, the most terrifying people to the system of capital are people who can't be sold things. That's the death of the system of capital. That if capital shows up and says, hey, I've got a thing for you to buy, and you say, no thanks. That's the end of the system of capital. And the truth is that it doesn't have anything to offer you. Like a Bugatti, right? Like a little toy. Sure. But you're selling your soul and you're selling yourself for it. You're selling the most valuable thing that you have, which is your time. That's the most valuable thing that you have, is your time. There's nothing more valuable than that. You are a randomly generated life form in a randomly generated location, in a randomly generated planet, in a randomly generated solar system, in a randomly generated universe, created by a force of creation you know nothing about. And that force of creation created all of this so that it could investigate itself through your existence. And you spend all your time selling that out so that you can get a Bugatti, so you can go zoom zoom in a little toy car. I can't imagine a dumber way to live. I can't imagine a stupider way to look at your existence than to say, I'm here to zoom in cars and have big house and feel superior to people who are sleeping on the streets. The energy that exists within you, the force that supports you and that you live within, also exists in all of creation. And that you are one of many, and that we are all equal in that energy, and that we are all equal in our validity as beings that exist in this plane of reality. And instead of selling all of our time and wasting all of our time trying to play with toys, if we actually began serious discussions about how we should make this place better so that we can have serious discussions about the nature of our reality. Why are we here? What is this? What are we investigating? What is this reality that we exist in? How should we interact with it? How can we sustain it? How can we make it a good place to be so that when random generated life forms come into it, they have the best possible time? Instead of having those discussions, we're all scrabbling around so that we can eat. It's a dumb fuck way to organize anything. It's a stupid thing to do. That we should be acknowledging the greatness and the power of the energy that created us. And we should be collectively coming together and saying, well, the creator says that we need food and shelter, obviously. So what we need to do is create the most robust systems in order to provide those things, because that's the demand of our creator. The demand of our creator is not to make Bill Gates rich. Oh, thank you, Just Me. Just to remind us, right? You're right. That's anti-Semitism, right? Jews are better than everyone. We don't have equality of validity. That's right. I forgot. The Jews are better. Meanwhile, these are the systems that we're choosing to spend our money on. Like, really think about how dumb fuck our society actually is. That instead of spending this money creating a system that actually provides food and shelter for its citizens, instead of creating a system that actually says, hey, you spawned in, here's food, here's shelter. Instead of saying that, the Pentagon is moving towards letting AI weapons autonomously decide to kill humans. This is what we're spending our money on. This is what we're spending our time on. This is what we're spending our resources on. This is what we're spending the fleeting fractional moment. This is how we're going to improve society. That you're going to be walking around in a society that's got drones flying in the sky that can independently decide whether or not you get to live. The U.S. is among the countries arguing against new laws to regulate AI-controlled killer drones. The U.S., China, and others are developing so-called killer drones. Critics are concerned about the development of machines that can decide to take human lives. The deployment of AI-controlled drones that can make autonomous decisions about whether to kill human targets is moving closer to reality, the New York Times reported. Lethal autonomous weapons that can select targets using AI are being developed by countries including U.S., China, and Israel. The use of the so-called killer robots would mark a disturbing development, say critics, handing life and death battlefield decisions to machines with no human input. Several governments are lobbying for the UN for a binding resolution restricting the use of AI killer drones, but the US is among a group of nations, which also includes Russia, Australia, and Israel, who are resisting any such move, favoring a non-binding resolution instead, the Times reported. This is one of the most significant inflection points for humanity. Alexander Komet, Austria's chief negotiator on the issue, told the Times. What's the role of human beings in the use of force? It's an absolutely fundamental security issue, a legal issue, and an ethical issue. The Pentagon is working towards deploying swarms of thousands of AI-enabled drones, according to a notice published earlier this year. In a speech in August, U.S. Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks said technology like AI-controlled drone swarms would enable the U.S. to offset China's People Liberation Army numerical advantage in weapons and people. We'll counter the PLA's mass with masses of our own, but ours will be harder to plan for, harder to hit, harder to beat, she said, reported Reuters. Frank Kendall, the Air Force Secretary, told the Times that AI drones will have the capacity to make lethal decisions while under human supervision. Individual decisions versus not doing individual decisions is the difference between winning and losing. And you're not going to lose, he said. I don't think people would be up against... I don't think people we would be up against would do that. And it would give them a huge advantage if we put that limitation on ourselves. The New Scientist reported in October that AI-controlled drones have already been deployed on the battlefield by Ukraine in its fight against the Russian invasion, though it's unclear if any have taken action resulting in human casualties. The Pentagon did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Like, explain to me how this is anything but just opening a Pandora's box of our own destruction. The idea that we're going to have control of this. And we're just doing it to ourselves. It's just the stupidest shit I've ever seen. Bloomy PP says, hi, first time watching on the topic of AI. I work in AI and we have a real problem regulating it. We cannot stop this technology to be used in military because the information is very much public. Yeah. Look, we're a bunch of screaming, squalling monkeys. We're going to take this technology. We're going to do the absolute worst thing possible with it. Like, can you imagine what the Gazan genocide would look like if there were just robots doing it? Right? Do you think we'd be talking about humanitarian corridors? Do you think we'd be talking about humanitarian anything? Like, literally just killer drones just... And if they're willing to do that there, they're willing to do it at home. Right? You wait until you're walking around the streets and you see these drones flying around. Yeah, imagine how much money is spent in the Ukraine and how many houses that is just gone and wasted. Yeah. Like, this is the insane mindset of the capitalist death cult. That infinite amounts of wealth for war, what they'll call security, but $0, absolutely zero for basic human necessity and basic human life. It's inhuman. It's godless. We will destroy ourselves with this shit. And when it happens, we deserve it. We absolutely deserve it. That the only thing that is going to prevent this kind of stuff is full-scale revolution at this point. That the psychopath class has detached itself from reality completely. That they are going to retreat to Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile islands and gated communities, underground bunkers, and they're going to unleash drone armies on us. That's going to be their solution. They're not interested in providing food. They're not interested in providing shelter. They're not interested in any of that. They're interested in having their weird little pedophile cults. They're interested in having their weird little kingdoms and their gigantic super yachts and their ability to shoot themselves at space and all of this crazy nonsense. And once the results and the consequences of that begin to become too big, and once the consequences of capital and the contradictions of capital begin to be unleashed on the public and the public begin organizing, they'll unleash AI drones on us. That's their strategy. That's what they're doing. You just need to look at Gaza to see that that's true. Like, I'm not fucking around when I'm talking about revolution. That it is obvious that we need to become a revolutionary force. It is obvious that we need to begin galvanizing the populace. It is obvious that we need to get together. Because the future of humanity is bleak indeed. It doesn't need to be, of course. We just needed to have a little bit of imagination, a little bit of creative power, a little bit of basic reason to actually say, wait a minute, things could actually be nice. We don't need to exist in this senseless place. We don't need to exist in this ridiculous carve up the dead in order to thrust them into infernal machines to have superpowers and go juice. Like it's the reality that we have created from the momentum of our necromancy is ridiculous, and it doesn't need to be this way. We simply don't need to operate this way. And the downward spiral that Western civilization is going to experience is going to become extra ridiculous because of technologies like this. Like, wait until Cop City. Wait until Bill Gates' private military or Jeff Bezos' private military or Elon Musk's private military gets access to these sorts of drones. Wait until they erect a security barrier around their compounds where AI drones are just instructed to shoot at anything that moves. Like, the warlordism that is going to come out of these decisions it's going to be outrageous. It's going to be ridiculous on a level that we have never experienced in human history. Imagine Genghis Khan with war drones. Like this is what we are looking at, and this is what we are building, and this is what we are facing. And we're all just continuing to go to work, eating the dumb Marvel slop that they're putting in front of us. We deserve it. We deserve it at this point. Like there's because it's so obvious what's happening. It's so obvious what's happening. It's obvious that the ruling class has become demented and psychotic. It's obvious that the ruling class has lost its mind. It's obvious that they are foaming at the mouth, that we are looking at rabid Nazis. And it's obvious that there's no limit to their depravity. It's obvious that that's the case. That we're all just crossing our fingers and hoping they won't do it to us, and they will. That the next generation of leadership that comes after the ghoul Joe Biden dies and the vampire Donald Trump dies is going to be just as ghoulish and just as vampiric, and they'll have the vigor of youth. That we got a little glimpse at that when Obama came into power. Hope and change, destroyed Libya, expanded the wars, literally was the guy that was responsible for opening up the drone program in the first place. Well, the next guy will be or lady, right? It'll be a 40-year-old, a 50-year-old, and have the renewed vigor and absolutely say, yeah, we should absolutely have autonomous drones flying over New York City as a climate crisis destroys it and reduces it into rubble. We should absolutely unleash this stuff in Florida and Miami to make sure that everyone's safe during a climate crisis that we have done everything to cause. We should absolutely make sure that this happens throughout the United States. Oh, hey, there's a group of communists that are getting together and forming a revolutionary force. Let's just get some autonomous robots in there and blow them up. Freedom, democracy, protection. We're protecting our values. These things will absolutely happen. And soon enough, the AI is just going to scrub us all off the internet. That you're already seeing that in my chat. I already see on a daily basis people complaining that they can't get chats and comments through. That we're having to speak with each other in a code, for God's sakes, to actually get things into the chat and actually have a discussion in the first place. And that's only going to ramp up, and it's only going to get crazier. It's only going to get crazier. That just because I'm showing a communist symbol, just because this symbol exists right here, I will be purged. It is going to happen. That I am hoping to just build up enough force so that when I am purged, you guys will be able to find me. And then I'll have to continue this work just simply locally. That's where it's eventually going to go. And then eventually they'll find a way to destroy even that work, which they've done in the past. We remember Tim Buck. We remember the communists that were martyred for this. We remember these people. And it's going to happen again, and it's going to be done with autonomous AI drones. Because these people are psychopaths, and they're not going to stop themselves. Does communism solve the problem of the separation between people and the government? Yes. That the entire theory of communist rule is that instead right now we are experiencing a dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, or a dictatorship of capital. That you can't vote against capital. It's a dictatorship of capital. That no matter who you vote for, you're voting for a capitalist. That's who you're voting for. You're voting for a capitalist every single time. That maybe you'll vote for a capitalist that's interested in concessions to the working class, but those concessions will eventually be rolled back once capital takes full control again. That the spectrum here in Canada is basically between concessions bargaining with capital and full-scale capitalist control. And there is no party that is willing to stand up and say we should be rid of the capitalist class, and we should not have a negotiation with them. That we should tell them where their resources are going, where the resources they took from the proletariat in the first place are going to be directed, and that their complaining is pointless. That we're just going to do it. You can't have that. They're not going to permit that within the system. And so what communism says is that we should overthrow the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie and install a dictatorship of the proletariat, and make it so that capitalists are not allowed in the system whatsoever, that they do not even have a voice. That if you are an asset holder, then you are an asset holder and you do not get to infect our system. And that's what the USSR did, and that's what the current Chinese communists do. That the quote-unquote negotiations that they have with the system of capital usually result in executions and disappearances, which I'm completely fine with. The system of capital has shown itself to be a completely psychotic system, ruled by the absolute worst people in human history. And it's not going to get better. They can't be negotiated with. They can't be reasoned with. That the only time we have ever seen any kind of success for the working people under the system of capital is when we have surrounded the halls of power and called for revolution with a credible force of people doing so. That's what happened with FDR. FDR didn't institute the New Deal because he was a good man who actually gave a shit about anybody. He did it because there were thousands of people outside of his door calling for a revolution. And that's where we need to return to. And until we're doing that, and until that's actually happening, they're going to start doing this autonomous drone shit. And that's the reason they're doing this autonomous drone shit, is so that when we start to do that, they'll just throw drones at us. Like, that's the true threat, is that they won't even need police anymore. They won't even need to have people doing it. Because eventually it'll get so bad and it'll get so absurd and it'll get so ridiculous that nobody will be willing to do it. Because everybody will understand how fraudulent the system is. And so they'll just unleash these drones on us, being operated by an AI. They won't even need to get the loyalty of a thug class. Like, that's the true threat of it. And so communism solves the problem of the separation between the people and the government because the people become the government. That you take a look at actual communist societies and not what the CIA has to say about actual communist societies. And what you see are workers' councils and workers' unions within businesses that elect leadership, that then elect leadership in the government and create councils within the government. And then you end up with a government that actually operates at the behest of the people. And you can see that happening right now in China. Like, the current Chinese government has a support of about 90%, according to Harvard. Has support of over 90% for its own people. And why? Because it's an elected body that's elected by people that then turns around and operates on the benefit of the people and actually listens to what the people want and is in a constant negotiation with the people. And when the people stand up and say, this is what we want, the leaders of their country actually find a way to do it, as opposed to just ignoring them and doing what the billionaire class wants. That when a crisis happens in China, they round up the billionaires, put them on trial, and in many cases execute them and then they seize those assets that the billionaires were using against the people and then distribute it into the populace. Whereas here in America, we have the exact same crisis that happens and we bail them out with our money and tell them, don't do it again. And then they go, what are they doing? They're going to do it again, obviously. Because we just bail them out. Why? We don't punish them. Our system doesn't respond to the people. We literally have a Princeton article saying outright and explicitly that our system doesn't respond to its people. Like, this is an oligarchy. We are not invested in this system anymore, and it doesn't respond to us. It's all just theater. We're just watching rich people jerk each other off. That's all it is. You're not obligated to follow its rules or its laws because it doesn't have any. They're just threats. That's all they are. The myth has always been that, oh, well, communist leadership eventually becomes corrupted and will work against the people. Show me evidence of it. Like, the clearest evidence I have of it is when the leadership of the Soviet Union finally decided to turn away from the communist project and dismantle the Soviet Union. But you can at least say that they were doing so because they were afraid of another Nazi invasion, another capitalist Nazi invasion. Yeah, China dismantled private tutoring schools for profit. Yeah. That China's policy is very clear. And they keep saying it. They keep saying it over and over and over again. And it's Westerners who are just constantly like, no, we don't believe you. While the people of China are like, yeah, but it's happening. It's obviously happening. Right? Allow foreign capital in and then redistribute that foreign capital. Right? Sure, we'll have a little moment where there will be like a group of people who have more money than the rest of us. Okay, that'll happen. Right? But we'll steadily distribute that as those systems of capital collapse, as they naturally do. Because the system of capital is designed to collapse inward and collapse in on itself, as it does, and as we've seen over and over and over again. And so when those systems of capital collapse, unlike propping it back up the way that we do through fascist means, the Chinese go, oh, it collapsed. Okay, well, it's gone then. And we'll take whatever assets exist within it and we'll distribute it back into the people. That's what it does. And that's its whole method. And it's working. It's obviously working. So while we are experiencing this Chinese ascendancy, and as the Chinese culture begins to become more and more powerful, we are in a clear decline where our solutions for everything are autonomous drones that'll just shoot people randomly. Because the drone went, it was a threat. Yeah, this is definitely something we should 100% tolerate. Any society that produces these things and puts them out for use is not one whose laws you need to follow. Full stop. They are explicitly a terror regime, like Skeletor, like on that level. Like, we are looking at James Bond villainy at this point. Like, this is some straight up, like, I can't even think of a more cartoonish villain than Skeletor. Just straight up like Sauron. Like what are you talking about? Autonomous drones flying in the sky that can just shoot people because they think so? What are you talking about? Absolutely not. No, 0%. Like, I have no loyalty to any country that deploys these anywhere, whether it be against an enemy or against us. Like, putting them on the battlefield alone is enough for me to say, nope, I revoke my citizenship. I'm no longer interested. And that's what we're going to do. That's what we're doing. Like, there is no such thing as America. There is no such thing as Canada. These are ideas that have lost their credibility very clearly. That you are a human. You are a member of humanity. Do you think this is pro-human or do you think this is anti-human? And just because you're going to destroy brown humans doesn't make any more pro-human. Oh, I forgot human nature. That's right. My bad. Because the most psychotic amongst us are the ones who should be defining what is or is not human nature, right? The people who are incapable of love are the ones who should be defining what human nature is. Got it. The people who are literally standing up and saying we should exploit people and enslave them and destroy them, and that the true genociders are the ones standing up against genocide. Those are the people who should be defining what is or is not human nature, right? This absolute worship of chaos, this absolute worship of money, worship of the self, this worship of a system of capital that has shown over and 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 over again its incompatibility with human life and human nature. Like, we are literally looking at a system that is currently in the process of picking a fight with creation itself. And it wants to stand in front of you and say, oh, this is just human nature. Well, if that's what human nature is, then creation is going to have something to say about it. And if your conclusion about what human nature is that we should exploit each other and destroy the society, well, then reality will go, oh, very well, and destroy you. That is what we are doing in a major and serious way. That the creative forces that are responsible for generating us in the first place will absolutely watch us destroy ourselves. It will absolutely sit there and say, I gave them so few rules. I gave them so few rules to follow. You need food, water, shelter. Make sure you do that without upsetting the balance of our creation. Oh, you're digging up the dead in order to forge them into little elixirs and liquids that you're pouring into machines to grant you superpowers. Interesting. Well, make sure you think about the carbon that you're spreading into the atmosphere. It's going to capture UV radiation. It's going to heat this place up. Oh, I see that you're observing that. I see. Oh, okay, cool. So you're going to do something about that, right? No? Oh. Interesting. Why? But for real, why? So you want to play with toys until you roast yourselves alive in an internal system of life generation. Why? Because it's fun. You escaped the Matrix. Interesting. And the force of creation will watch us do it. That Jesus will not come down from heaven. That the aliens are not going to appear. That there isn't going to be a big gong with like a little checkpoint. There isn't going to be some force that walks in the door and says, well, that was a fun game you guys were playing. Here's the score screen. It looks like you could have done better here, but now we're going to clean this all up so you can continue down your merry way. That the temperature is going to go up. We've already gotten to 2 degrees already. It's already happened. We can absolutely get to 3 degrees. We can absolutely get to 4 degrees. We can absolutely get to 5 degrees. And the force of creation that was completely responsible for creating us will go, I guess that's what human nature is. And to me, it looks like we're just going to stand by and watch that happen. We're just going to be like, oh, okay. Yeah. Normal. Completely and totally normal. While the people who have power are literally genocidal maniacs. That if this is human nature, then we're getting everything we deserve. Because we lack even the most basic survival instinct to not eradicate ourselves. And the force of creation, after experiencing us self-inflicting a heat death upon ourselves, will regenerate. And we'll say, oh, okay, well, the problem's gone. Right? That we're not spewing carbon into the atmosphere just pointlessly for toys so that we can drive around in Bugattis and have big space stations and listen to Taylor Swift concerts. Those are all gone. Okay. So the human nature is gone. The stupidity is gone. The lack of intelligence is gone. Oh, okay, cool. And it will regenerate itself because that's what it does. That's the system. And then some new life form will come up. And maybe it will have intelligence. Maybe it will have basic sense. Maybe it will be lacking in this human nature that is so destructive and incapable of basic thinking and basic reason. Like, if this is human nature, we'll get exactly what we deserve. Exactly what we deserve. And what's insane is that the rich will suffer as much as the poor. The rich need air too. The rich aren't immune. Like, weird little psychopaths like Ben Shapiro will be like, yeah, the heat will go up. We'll just use air conditioning. Like, do you not understand what the sun can do? Like, these guys are actually under the delusion that they are more powerful than the sun. You understand? Do you understand the level of dementia, the level of psychosis, the level of hubris that we are dealing with? That these people actually think, genuinely, actually think that they are more powerful than the sun. That they will be able to hide in their houses with air conditioners. And that the sun will go, oh, I guess they're safe in their safe zone because they have an air conditioner they bought from Costco. The heat will go up to such a degree that it will melt your air conditioners. You understand? Like, do you understand that according to the Christians, God made a promise with us that he would never wipe out humanity with a flood? Well, he didn't say anything about fire. And the best part about it, the absolute best part about it, is that we're completely doing it to ourselves. For nothing. For nothing. We wake up, we get in a shitty little car that spits out carbon, literally the bones of our ancestors that we've dredged out of the ground in this necromantic process, that we burn to make us go fast. And then the dead, having now been awakened, go up into our atmosphere and look down on us with ire for having awakened them. And what are we doing? Why are we rousing the dead so? Oh, it's so most of us can go to places we hate, to do tasks that don't need to happen, to increase the line in a game we ourselves invented. When what we could do, crazy thought, just insane. You guys are going to absolutely lose your minds when you hear this one. What we could do is nothing. What we could do, crazy thought, is stay the fuck home. That we maintain the amount of food generation we need, right? So that people don't starve. Unlike what the capitalist death cult is going to do. Because you think the crops are not going to burn? Of course they will. So we increase the amount of food, or we keep stable the amount of food we need. And we just tell people to stay the fuck home. And when the capitalists complain, we say, shut up. And if we're smart, we take them and put them in prison cells. Tax their wealth away. Lock the key. Throw it away. Forget where we put them. People like Darren Woods. We just forget where we put this guy. These frauds and these liars and these phonies. And we stop polluting. We tell Taylor Swift, sorry, Swiftie, you can't go on tour. Sorry, Swiftie. I know. It's super important that people come together and listen to you bitch about your boyfriend. Super, super important. Too bad. We say to Jeff Bezos, hey, you can't shoot rockets at space anymore. You know that big super yacht? Park it. Too bad. Too bad. And if they say, but I want to, and they do it anyway, then we take them and we put them in jail cells and we forget where we put them. Stop polluting. Stop polluting. Because the system is fully capable of regenerating itself. We don't need stupid ideas like carbon capture, which are going to create more pollution than they pull out of the atmosphere. Because you need to build these things. We don't need dumb little ideas or technological solutions. We don't need capitalists to sell us products. We need to stop polluting and allow the system that literally created us. Literally, the system generated us. Like, we're not gods. Right? Like, we don't have the capacity to destroy this system. We only have the capacity to destroy ourselves and prove ourselves to be incompatible with the system of creation. And that when we destroy ourselves, the system of creation will simply regenerate itself and generate something new. Because that's what it does, obviously. Obviously, that's what it does. And if we would like to stay here and continue enjoying this system that is generating us, then we just need to stop polluting. And it will heal itself because it's more than capable of doing that. And these people that are standing around and denying that it's happening that are standing around trying to sell us products, telling us that we need to bend the knee to capital and capital will solve the problem. These people should go in jail cells and be forgotten about as the overt criminals to humanity that they are. And I consider this position to be the centrist position. I consider this position to be completely normal and rational. If there was a serial killer walking around your town slaughtering people in the open, and people were saying it wasn't happening, you would consider those people to be demented criminals, at least complicit with the serial killer going around murdering people in the open. And you would fight against them, and you would certainly fight against the serial killer if it showed up to kill you. But for some reason, if it's people just pouring pollution into the atmosphere and the sun burning us down, we listen to these people as free speech. Yeah, these are serious people who we should definitely take. So, oh, and you want to fight against me? Well, you're the radical. It's certainly not the people who are calling for the destruction of all mankind that are the radicals. It's certainly not the people who are actively working to destroy humanity that are the radicals. No, it's the people who would like humanity to survive that are the radicals. Oh, okay. We deserve everything we're going to get. We in our lifetimes, we are watching the water levels come up. We're watching Florida, Vancouver, sections of China, right? We're watching the South underwater. New York City becomes a ruin. Yeah, and the billionaires will be racing to try to escape to Mars. I hope their ships blow up in space. I hope that they choke. Because it will not be successful. These people are too stupid. Like, these people are dim-witted. Because if they were smart, they would understand that, you know what we should do? We should stop polluting. And we should let the generative system regenerate itself. Yeah. But they're not. They're dimwits. So they'll choke in space. D-Clams on Twitch. Honestly, pretty left-wing and support a Palestinian state, but don't really like the slogan from the river to the sea. I don't think it really matters if it's anti-Semitic or not. Just a phrase that doesn't really add anything to the conversation or make it likely both sides will talk. I don't think your opinion of it matters at all. Like, the people who are experiencing a genocide came up with a slogan, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That's the slogan of the people who are experiencing a genocide. Tough shit. Too bad. That is their articulation. That is what they are saying. They don't need permission. They don't need to be criticized. We don't have the right to criticize them. We are in no position to criticize them. People like Michael Higgins, fucking genocidal maniacs from the National Post. Yeah, of course it's an anti-Jewish chant. Well, it's an anti-Zionist chant. Like, we know. Because the Zionists should be defeated, like the Nazis were defeated. Like, we know. But history began on October 7th, so... I will always believe that we can do it. I know this last half hour has been very grim, very dark. But the truth is that we can definitely recover. Definitely. Because the solutions are actually very easy and very simple. They just require us to be honest. And they just require us to be humble and mature. They require us to come down from our hysteria. They require us to cease being so childish and to start having serious conversations. But the solutions themselves, the path to the solutions will be hard for lots of people. But the solutions themselves are actually very straightforward. Stop polluting. Stop this Taylor Swift garbage. Stop this Jeff Bezos garbage. Stop this rampant militarism for nothing. Just stop. Cease. Just don't do it. Just literally do not do it. Turn the lights off in Times Square. Stop pretending like energy is infinite. Like, actually act like reasonable people, capable of rational thought. Stop polluting. The idea that we're just going to keep polluting, but we'll do carbon capture, yeah, that'll do it. That'll fucking do it. Absolutely. Get the fuck right out of here. It's just brain dead. Like, we know who's causing the pollution. We know where the pollution is coming from. We know it's the super wealthy that are causing all of this pollution by gallivanting about in their luxury planes and their space vehicles. Like, we know what's happening. And we know that we can stop. During the COVID period was the only time there was a decline in our emissions. Why? Because we all just went the fuck home. So we're perfectly capable of declining our emissions. It's perfectly possible. It just doesn't benefit the psychopath class directly. It obviously benefits them because it means they get to continue breathing the air too. No, Tim, I will always believe that it is possible. Even as the water comes up, even as the famines take hold, even as the wildfires burn down cities, even when we are experiencing the absolute worst, when people are choking to death in the street because they can no longer breathe the air, when the wet bulbs take hold and people are just dying because they can no longer cool themselves through their natural systems, when islands are underwater, I will say this over and over and over and over again, and I'll say it until the day I die and I can no longer even speak. We can always recover from this. We can always recover from this. The system that generated us wants us to do so. It wants us here. It created us. It generated us. Billions of years of evolution for us to be here. The creative force wants us to succeed. It wants us to come to the realization. And if we do come to the realization, it wants us to continue thriving and surviving and learning and growing. That the creative force wants us here. But it will watch us kill ourselves. that we have that freedom. That what we are confronting truly is one of the checkpoints. This is why I genuinely believe that like spacefaring creatures cannot be warlike. It can't be that way. Because space is unforgiving. You cannot be an antagonistic-minded, warlike people and confront the realities of space and survive. That you have to adopt into your modes of thinking reality. You have to accept that reality exists and that reality cannot be negotiated with. That the rules and the laws of reality are real and you must abide by them or they will destroy you. And we are facing one of the great checkpoints. Will we be able to overcome it? And I will always believe that we can. Because it is actually easier than you think. Because the rules are not that hard to follow. That the issue that we are facing is not the reality of the rules. It's that we believe that we are the best and the most important. That we are greater than God. That we are greater than the forces of creation. That creation exists for us and not the other way around. And that if we refuse to humble ourselves, we will be humbled. That is the promise of the universe. That if we are willing to play ball, if we are willing to acknowledge the rules that have been put in place in front of us, and when I say rules, I don't mean your dumb little magic books. I mean the obvious rules that 100% exist. The physical laws of reality. You need food, you need shelter, you need air. If you pour pollution into your atmosphere, your planet will heat up and you will die. The rules, the laws, the physical laws of reality. If you're willing to follow those, then there is no limit to what humanity can achieve and what humanity can do. As long as humanity acknowledges that it does so as a partner with the universe and not as a dominating force of the universe. Because right now we believe that the universe exists for us to destroy, control, dominate, and exploit. And the universe is going to have something to say about that. And we're not going to win that conversation. That if the game is about domination, control, and exploitation, you'll find that the universe is a much better player. But if we are willing to acknowledge the rules and play the game within those rules, then suddenly we'll find that the universe is more than happy for us to explore our own planet, explore the moon, explore Mars and Jupiter, explore our solar system and the galaxy, peacefully and happily, as we go around ensuring everyone is happy and safe, well-fed, well-clothed. And so we are experiencing as a people together the great checkpoint. Can we do it? As long as one of us is still alive, we can. As long as the message lives, we can. As long as humanity can say out loud, as I say now, that the universe is more powerful than us. That it wants us here. It wants us to succeed. It wants to work with us. All we have to do is follow the rules. As long as we can say that, as long as there's anyone out here that believes it, we can do it. But we're going to learn some lessons. They're going to be hard. They're going to be hard lessons to learn. I strongly suggest to everybody, if you're still listening, to take some time and just go sit in a park, go sit on the beach, spend some time and sit down with your creator, and just exist within the energy, and just exist within the reality that you exist within. I know for myself, Wednesdays have become that day. Wednesdays have become the day where I go and I sit on the beach and I just spend time alone, disconnected, separate. And I highly advise everyone does this. Because it comes with a sense of peace. That maybe humanity is doomed. Oh well. Your creator will always be here. The force of the universe will always be here. That humanity's not as important as you think it is. That it would be nice if we succeeded. And I think it would be nice for the creator if we succeeded. It would be nice if we could continue down the path of exploration, to discover more about creation, to discover more about ourselves, to discover more about the universe and the universal forces and the energy that sustains us. It would be nice. It would be nice if we could be a larger part within the body of creation and be more effective and more useful. It would be nice. But if we're not going to be, then we don't need to be here. We need to be asking ourselves what really matters. What really matters? Do you think a little species that's been around for 0.01% of the universe's time matters? Yeah, I'd like to experience other worlds' conceptions about music. Oh, sure. Honestly, I'd love to have a conversation with an octopus. That's what I'd like. I feel like we're very focused on space travel, and the universe. We don't really know anything about our own planet. That's what I would love to see. Good to see you, Eric. Like, give me the video game where we're actually exploring our own planet and the species that exist within our own planet. Some of the kooky, crazy shit that exists on Earth. Why are we so focused on decoding the language of some alien species or interacting with some alien species when there are fucking octopi and dolphins and whales and kraken, giant squid, tortoises? We don't know anything about these things. We know nothing. That's what makes it so hilarious. That's what makes someone like Elon Musk so hilarious. Is that he wants us to believe that we're going to be able to go off into space and know things about planets and the universe when we don't know anything about Earth. The deepest oceans are virtually unknown to us. Yeah, and we think we're going to succeed in space. Ha 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 ha. I laugh at that idea. That is a dumb way to think. Eric, you always have interesting stories. Want to hear a funny story? Don't want to hear a funny story to end the week. What happened to me last week? It's about how I was able to say to a conservative, I bloody told you so, and he was fuming that he couldn't do anything for defending leftism. Yeah, man, lay it on. Lay it on. We could use a little positive note. I know I'm getting into that not even quasi-spiritual space. I just think it's funny that we don't spend any time whatsoever thinking about the force that created us. That's really what I think is so funny. Like, where do you think we came from? What do you think is this? How do you think we're alive? Like, what do you think is sustaining this? Why? To what end? For what purpose? And we're all just like, nah, I gotta get to work. Why? Well, I gotta get food and shelter. Well, why? That seems like a stupid way to live. Like, that to me seems to be like the basics. We should have had that in hand forever ago. Like, what kind of high technology society doesn't provide food and shelter for its citizens? That seems fucked up. That seems fucked up. Like, what are you talking about? I just find myself constantly taken by this. Constantly taken by this idea. Constantly taken by this thought. That the force of the universe generated us for a reason. That we exist for a purpose. That we don't simply just exist to eat everything around us and that's it. Eric says, I was in a religious group last weekend where there was a guy who made a comment about how the left is from the devil since they eat other. I commented to him saying, you don't think the left is from the devil because they want people to have food and shelter. They think that the poor should have access to resources, and that makes them evil, like the devil. Dude, Christians are wild. Like, God created all things, but there's this devil creature that exists. But doesn't God create the devil then? So you're telling me that God creates the devil in order to inflict humanity with suffering. So doesn't that make God just this enormous dickhead? Like, Christianity is like hilarious with its incoherencies and its inconsistencies. Like, God created mankind to be sinful, but wanted to forgive mankind of its sins, and so went down to earth as himself in Jesus in order to sacrifice himself through crucifixion in order to forgive humanity of the sins that he created in the first place. What? Dude, what are you talking about? Right wingers eating each other, like leftists eating each other. What are you talking about? Got some cannibalism going on? They absolutely do. The difference between left and right is that the right is about power and domination, while the left is about how to liberate the working class. Yeah, aren't they all essentially revisions of Mesopotamian mythology anyway? Look, I don't hate the religious discourse that has happened throughout the past. Like, every single time a religious story gets written and told, it is a way for humanity to advance its own thinking and its own self. That the religious struggle has always been a struggle to understand that we are more than our basic senses. That's basically what it all comes down to. That every time it's an attempt to articulate and get a more meta perspective, get a wider view of yourself and humanity. Get a wider view, get a larger view than simply you exist and are hungry. Like that it's all just about you, right? The worship of the self that exists within the capitalist death cult. No, Eric, then another guy joins in. This is where it gets good. Where he told me I need to stop spreading my pro-communist propaganda. I stood on my ground and exposed his double standards. You mean, like, I love it. It's a Christian group, and you're basically saying, like, this is what Christ said. Give your money to the poor. Right? Like, give your money to the poor. That's what Christ said. Right? I find it so funny that people walk around calling themselves Christians, but if you actually say, hey, we should give money to the poor, you know how Christ said, oh, you're just an evil, you're lazy, and you don't want all the excuses you've ever heard in your life. Meanwhile, their leader, like the ideological leader of their religion, walking around being like, give your money to the poor, sell all your possessions, give your money to the poor, follow me. Right? He said it all the time. It's like one of the things he was known for. Oh, if you do that, then people will be lazy and they'll just lay around doing nothing all day. Because that's how it actually works, right? People who have, like, if this was true, if you just made people rich and then they sat around and did nothing all day, then that's what you would expect to see out of people like Elon Musk and Bill Gates, right? You would expect to see people who get $1 billion to sit around and do nothing, right? Because once they have $1 billion and they don't need to work, right, they'll just sit around and do nothing. Is that what we're seeing? No. They definitely do stuff, right? They're just, the stuff that they do is pretty bleak and dark, which is why we should get rid of them. Good vibes comes in with certainly not good vibes. 100 years of dictatorship, and you have some nerd with an ugly beard dreaming again. What are you talking about, bro? 100 years of dictatorship. Like, I love it when these guys come in and they don't know anything, right? Like, you don't know anything about communism. And also, and just so you know, like, if you're saying that my beard is ugly, yeah, it's just embarrassing, dude. Like, why do people embarrass themselves so thoroughly on my stream? It's like a kink, I think. I think people get off on humiliation, and so they humiliate themselves publicly. Although it's anonymous. So I don't know. I don't know what you're up to. Just illiterate, embarrassing themselves. Then the other guy, he told, I've got to stop spreading my pro-communist propaganda. I stood on my ground. He exposed his double standards where he preaches about free speech, but wants to silence me for my opposing worldview. There's nothing he can do to stop me to spread my ideas. He ended to ban me from the group. What he failed to realize is that I was a friend with two admins in the group. They overruled him and said I was unjustly kicked out. He was fuming after 12 hours and pissed off. Yeah. Oh, look, a hypocrite. A total hypocrite, right? It's free speech until somebody else wants to, until you disagree with it, right? It's free speech until it's like what we're seeing with Elon Musk right now, right? If you say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free on Twitter, you can be suspended, right? So it's free speech if it's the N-word. It's free speech if you're calling for genocide. It's free speech if it's about stealing resources from other nations. It's free speech if it's about calling for war and spreading terror. But if you're standing up against genocide, if you're standing up against the apartheid state, you can be suspended. Big surprise that an apartheid baby would say that. Good Vibes says, respect yourself, buddy, in Western civilization. We're loving too much the democracy. I don't know what world you're living in, my man. Like, did you know that food bank usage tripled in the last 6 months? Did you know that average rent for an apartment right now is $2,100 in the city I live in? And you're all about democracy. Did you know that Princeton did a study and said that the system doesn't respond to the electorate? Like, that's a Princeton study. That's not me that said that. So you're sitting there worshiping and venerating your democracy, but your democracy doesn't respond to you. It doesn't listen to what you have to say. It doesn't care about you. So I don't know what world you live in where you're saying this kind of stuff. But I mean, I guess if you don't know anything, you can say what you like. Eric, that's a fun story. Like, talk about dictatorship. Your answer is look how the money is shared. The link. I think I'm talking to what, like a 13-year-old right now? Good Vibes? How close to the mark am I with that? Like, again, I don't think you know anything about communism. Like, I think that's pretty embarrassing. You revealed your true nature. This is good. These are good vibes. Democracy doesn't interest you. No, I'm a big fan of democracy. That's why I'm a communist, right? I just think that you're not really interested in reality. Like, Princeton study oh, come on. Democracy. Oh, yeah. Is it America? There it is. Yeah. Study. U.S. is an oligarchy, not a democracy. This is from Princeton, reported by CNN. Right? So if you want to engage... Oh, sorry. This is BBC, rather. If you want to engage with reality, right? If you want to actually come and put your feet in reality, then you should start listening to evidence, and you should start actually listening to what's in front of you, instead of listening to dumb kind of CIA propaganda or what the State Department thinks, right? So U.S. not an oligarchy. Sorry, U.S. is an oligarchy, not a democracy. The U.S. is dominated by a rich and powerful elite. So concludes a recent study by Princeton University professor Martin Gillens and Northwestern University professor Benjamin L. Page. This is not news, you say. Perhaps, but the two professors have conducted exhaustive research to try to present data-driven support for this conclusion. Here's how they explain it. Multivariate analysis indicates that economic elites and organized groups representing business interests have substantial independent impacts on U.S. governmental policies, while average citizens and mass-based interest groups have little or no independent influence. in English, the wealthy few move policy, while the average American has a little power. The two professors came to this conclusion after reviewing answers to the 1,779 survey questions asked between 1981 and 2002 on public policy issues. They broke the responses down by income level, then determined how often certain income levels and organized interest groups saw their policy preferences enacted. A proposed policy change with low support among economically elite Americans is adopted only about 18% of the time, while a proposed change with high support is adopted about 45% of the time. Like, perhaps we ought to suck it up, admit we have a classless society, and do like England, where we have a House of Lords and a House of Commoners, she writes, instead of pretending as though we have all some kind of equal opportunity here. So, here's pretty strong evidence that we don't live in a democracy, we live in an oligarchy, right? We've got a Princeton report where they've done so. It is not only the elite who are voting, blame the voters. They don't want your shitty system. I mean, you think that the system of power is informing the voters of what that system is? No, it's misinforming people like yourself of what's actually going on in the world, where you're saying that communists are interested in dictatorship when you don't know anything about communism. Like, what do you know? For real, what do you know? What's the name of the leader of China? Like, what do you know? What's the name of the electoral system in China? What's the name of the governing body of China? Like, what do you know? You don't know anything. Like, I don't understand why people feel like they can come in here and lecture me about what's going on in the world when you're illiterate. Like, you don't even know what system I'm talking about. It's sort of wild, in fact, that you're sitting there saying I'm anti-democracy when the system that you ostensibly support is anti-democratic to its core, according to Princeton. That the system I'm supporting is actually a system of worker councils that's actually democratic, where the workers actually have a vote and that vote is actually listened to. The true communism never existed? Pathetic? Nope. So now you're just defaulting to CIA tropes because you don't actually have a thought, right? You don't actually have an argument. You don't actually have a thought. You're not actually illiterate. You're not actually intelligent. You don't know anything about the subject, so you're just defaulting to CIA bullshit tropes, like the true communism never existed. That what communism is, and what Marxist-Leninism is a process by which we move the society away from capital and dictatorship and monarchy towards a system of communism. And that the communist societies and the societies that have attempted to enact communism have been wildly successful if you actually observe the societies and you actually observe what they are doing. That the whole true communism has never existed is something the CIA says in order to strawman the conversation, and then dimwits like you come in and say when you've got nothing else to say. I work a full-time job, my man. And they love my beard. I get regular comments on my beard. The fact that you're insulting my beard tells me that you're kind of a child, honestly. Like 14, right? Like, when you grow up, right, and you actually join the workforce, and you actually go get a job, right, and if you're able to move out of your mom's apartment, right, or your mom's house, right, if you're able to get out from your parents, and you're actually able to, leave school, and you're actually able to get into the workforce, and actually able to get a job and pay rent, you're going to find out pretty fast that the system of capital is organized against you. That it's organized to suppress you. It's organized explicitly to make your life harder. And it's for a very explicit reason, because you're just a commodity to them. Right? Like, I know that you're too young to realize it. I know you're just a little kid. And so you want to believe that daddy is not going to abandon you. But daddy is in the thrall of capital too. That he's trying his best and he's working hard, I'm sure. Right? But when you leave and you go out into the workforce, you're going to find that you're going to have to sell yourself. But communist leaders don't suppress you for real. Well, it sort of depends on what you mean by suppression. Like if you're walking around saying we should enslave sections of the populace, you're going to experience suppression. But if you're walking around saying, hey, education should be free, food and shelter should be widely available, rent should be cheap, right? You're not going to find that you're going to be very suppressed. These are not arguments. Like, again, I know you're a little kid, but basic manners. Like, basic manners. Like, are they not teaching you manners? Like, there's a way to talk to people and there's not a way to talk to people. And this is... Remember your friend Mao, maybe. Okay. I will. Mao was a great world leader. He defeated United States imperialism, British imperialism, and Japanese imperialism, as well as the internal monarchical forces that were dominating his country, turning his country into the poor man of Asia, and ended 100 years of humiliation. He increased the productive forces of China and put China on the right path to where now it's one of the most prosperous countries in the world. Oh, how many dead? Yeah, I'm sure that he killed a lot of imperialists. Yeah, I'm sure that a lot of imperialists and a lot of fascists died. Yeah, I don't think he killed enough, frankly. Like, are you pro-Nazi? Do you think that killing Nazis is bad? Yeah, I reveal my true visage. Yep, I'm anti-Nazi. I think that killing Nazis is fine. So again, I'll ask you straight. Do you think Nazis are good? Do you think that we should not have fought the Nazis? Like, do you think we should not have fought the Nazis? Pretty straightforward question. Do you think that the Nazis should have been left alone? Yeah. Oh, you're a Democrat. The Democrats are currently committing a genocide in Palestine. So my question stands. Are you pro-Nazi? So as a Democrat, you support genocide, right? You call yourself a Democrat. Well, the Democrats are currently enacting a genocide in Palestine, right? They're ethnically cleansing the land. We literally have the government confessing to it. Like we literally have the government of Netanyahu outright admitting it. So you're pro-genocide, right? So why should I be taking your opinion seriously on any subject? Please explain that to me. As someone who's pro-genocide, why should I take your opinion seriously? No. Yeah, we are talking about communism. You're actually right. We are talking about communism. No, I think it's important for you to understand the lack of credibility you have in the conversation. Right? So you're illiterate. You're pro-genocide. So why should I take your opinion on communism seriously? As someone who's pro-genocide and who is illiterate. You don't know anything about the subject. You don't even know anything about your own party. Yet, and it's interesting that you're not answering the question. Are you anti-Nazi? Do you think that we should have just not fought the Nazis? And yeah, I think we should have killed more Nazis. Do you think we shouldn't have killed Nazis? So we should have just let Nazis murder 25 million Russians, right? That's fine, right? Okay, so you're anti-Nazi. So we should have killed the Nazis. Right? So we should have killed the Nazis. Cool. So who do you think Mao was fighting? Do you think Mao was fighting people who were blowing kisses and giving hugs? That China was experiencing what's called 100 years of humiliation. You can look it up and read it for yourself. But the imperial powers were dominating and controlling and enslaving China, enacting brutal regimes. The Japanese imperialists were especially bad. And when Mao fought against them and won, he was right to do so. That I thought that he was actually quite merciful. I thought that he was actually quite generous to the imperialists. So what's your point here? Because my point is that it's acceptable to fight against Nazis. It's acceptable to fight against imperialists, like your friends of Hamas. Hamas is fighting against a genocide that you are ostensibly in favor of as a Democrat. Hamas is fighting against a genocide. Why do you support a genocide? So again, I ask you a very simple question. Why should I take your opinion seriously when you are pro-genocide? This is what's so kind of outrageous about what the discourse and what's happening. Like, your position actually is that genocide is fine. We don't live in a democracy, and that the people who are actually calling for democracy and standing up against genocide are actually the villains. And that's your actual position. And I'm supposed to take you seriously. I mean, you should be taken seriously as the threat against humanity that you are, but that's why I doubt if you're working or not telling freely that some people should die. Nazis should die. People who commit genocides should die. That it is completely fine and it's completely acceptable to fight against those people. Like, if someone kicked in your door and was trying to kill you with a knife and you killed them, you would have done the right thing. It's called self-defense. American Nazis should die, yes. Their ideology is about rounding up people and exterminating them. If your ideology is that you want to round people up and exterminate them, then you don't need to be part of this civilization or this society. And I'm fine with that. And I don't know why you're protecting Nazis. So you are actually pro-Nazi. You're just going to go along with the tribe. That if the tribe decides to start fighting Nazis, you're just going to go along with it. But if the tribe decides to start protecting Nazis, you're going to go along with that too. Right? Because you have no principles. Because you don't know anything. Yeah, I also don't think commies should die. Why would commies need to die? Under what principle? Because the principle of getting rid of Nazis is pretty clear. Nazism is a policy of extermination of minority groups. Right? That Nazis say out loud that we are a superior race and that we should purge and ethnically cleanse subhumans. That's Nazism. Or Zionism. Right? And so we don't tolerate that. We fight back against that. So what principle, by what principle do you think communists should or should not be killed? No, if you're a Nazi, you revoke your privileges. Nazis have no rights. Like, again, why are you defending Nazis? Why are you defending Nazis? Which again, because you're defending Nazis and you're pro-genocide, ostensibly, why should I take you seriously? What credibility do you have? Because it's the most hated humans of your ideology. What? That doesn't make any sense. So are you saying that communists are more hated than Nazis? Is that what you're saying? And we know what commies are doing with their more hated humans. What? What do you know? I show to you how dangerous you are. I mean, I would be dangerous to Nazis. That's true. Look, I have no problem saying that Nazis should be considered a threat. I don't know why you're defending Nazis. An ideology who wants to kill Nazis, not U.S. citizens. So again, I don't know why you're protecting Nazis. So why are you pro-Nazi? So you're pro-genocide and you're pro-Nazi. That Nazis should be free, right? That's your position? Perfect. When you're a Democrat, you tolerate other ideas, including genocide and Nazism, right? Proving pretty obliquely that Democrats have no principles. Right? If you have no principles, then you don't need to defend anything. And if you're unwilling to defend anything, then you have no principles. So all you're doing is coming into my chat and proving to me that you have no principles. That you don't care to defend anything. And you are pro-genocide and pro-Nazism. That's what you've achieved today. I want you to understand that. Good vibes. What you have achieved in my chat today is that you, a Democrat, are pro-genocide, pro-Nazi, and that Democrats are pro-genocide and pro-Nazi, and that you have no principles. Thanks, good vibes. Have a good day. Oopzilla writes, pro-genocide liberals pretending they have the moral high ground. Yeah, unlike duplicitous liberals, communists stand on their positions openly. Libs have cognitive dissonance because their entire societal framework was always built on hypocrisy. Yeah, pretty clear. Pretty clear. So it's interesting having a conversation like that with somebody who just openly admits that they're pro-genocide, pro-Nazi, and that they're unwilling to fight against Nazis or genocide. Democrats have no principles. And that's been affirmed today. So thank you, good vibes, for affirming what we already knew, that Democrats have no principles. No, Eric, I don't think he knew what he was referring to. I think that we were just talking to a little kid, honestly. Probably too young to even have principles, really. Like, just gonna kind of go along with the tribe, more or less. Well, I think we're over time. Always remember, guys, each and every one of you is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. rebel, revolt, repent. Good luck.